The protagonist suddenly woke up not knowing about his whereabouts and assuming that he was in another life. Upon touching, he assumed that what was around him was wood. The men in panic quickly assumed that he had been placed in a coffin as he was presumed dead, which only left him more intrigued, seeing how he was standing up inside the wooden box, leaving him confused as he didn't have the ability to recall anything. Yet even in his state of panic, he judged it wise to exit the box by breaking the wood around him, and so he began punching, only to be struck by immense pain. Yet even despite the blood coming out of his fists, he kept on punching, when suddenly something began to leak out of the wood. This suspicious and strange liquid found in a deadly trap wasn't water, according to the hero, who immediately tasted it. Just then, a panel window popped up explaining that this was mysterious honey, a common item that gives life force and patches up wounds. The trap protagonist was astonished as this place had system notices. To his astonishment, his injured fists began to heal. With that, the protagonist lost track of time as he kept on punching the wood, thinking of how honey resolved his water and food problem as well as his need for medication. The hero grew clueless about how much time passed since he began punching the wood, until finally, it cracked, opening a path for the protagonist. Just like that, our trapped hero managed to exit the wooden box. Even so, he was still confused about his whereabouts, as a canal of honey was next to him as well as a hole in the wall blocked by a giant rock. And just as he tried to analyze the situation, the system congratulated him for completing the tutorial dungeon. This left him baffled as he was now in dungeon 1-to-1 and less than 100 users were allowed to enter the next dungeon, according to the system. Upon reading this, the hero was left in a state of panic, thinking of how he had to escape more dungeons. The lack of logic became more and more astonishing as the system asked him to choose a nickname for his streams. This made him realize that he was now forced to be part of some sort of strange game, making him utter the words, "Please save me," as a sign of defeat. Just like that, the system assumed that his new nickname was now "Please Save Me," claiming that it would stick with him until he completed dungeon 1-to-10. With that, the viewer's comments window appeared, with the first one mocking him for his username. The second claimed that his name was too long, they shall only call him PS. When the astonished young man asked if he was being watched, other viewers confirmed, claiming that the hero was streaming right now. According to the system, one could check the profile of his own channel by going to the settings. With that being said, a window panel appeared with information about our hero, as well as his common rank, the place he was in, and much more. With that, the young man was left astonished as he couldn't understand the presence of viewers, as well as the fact that he had been inside the coffin for almost 10 months. The hero asked the viewer if he was deceased, so this one explained how it wasn't exactly the case. He then urged the viewer to send him back to Earth, only to be mocked. And when he started begging, the viewer quickly shook him off. But the scared young man demanded an explanation, which quickly annoyed the one in the comments, claiming that if he kept this attitude during his streams, he was certain to meet his demise. With that, the desperate and headless young man decided to press any button, only to stumble upon a shop that would open only in this particular dungeon and that used balloons, something that the hero didn't have as currency. The hero then asked if winning would bring him back to Earth, so the viewer explained that he didn't know about it, but he needed to do his best and meet King Yahello, the ruler of Hell. This made the young one assume that he had truly left the living world and that this game might be a chance for him to get back to life. Just then, the audience of the protagonist grew by one, who quickly demanded a warm welcome. Upon comparing it to shows present on Earth, the hero realized that this might be his chance to get some balloons. And so he presented himself as Go Insun while bowing and screaming in an odd way. The viewers began to call him out for not using his nickname, stating how he was the 100th contestant to escape a tutorial dungeon, and that only he could enter the second. He realized that he wasn't the only one stuck in the game. The comments quickly began to call him an idiot for only just noticing now, claiming that this lolliness was the reason behind him being stuck in the box for 300 days. Upon seeing that his audience had grown once more, he asked the viewers to help him escape, yet they refused, claiming that they would get a warning. And when asked about the tutorial dungeon, he explained how he punched the wood relentlessly until it broke, which the viewers didn't believe. And so I presented the destroyed coffin as proof of his achievement, which left them all amazed before claiming that he only had to push the door right above his head. Learning that the solution was, in fact, truly easy left the hero ashamed and astonished. The viewers then asked him if he used honey to survive for 300 days and heal his injuries, which he confirmed. This greatly entertained the entity, who decided to send him 7 balloons. Upon receiving his first currency, the young man was left deeply thankful, while the viewer explained that there was a reason for the presence of every item. With that being said, Please Save Me thanked the audience as he promised to become the grand champion, as they were left amused by how into the game he was. The entity then claimed that the young man should do his best, as this dungeon should be taken seriously. Later on, we see him trying to saw the bars of the window, and while doing so, he was left shocked upon seeing that the first player had already reached the second dungeon. The hero then realized that those who finish first get treats upon seeing that the one who just escaped received an F-rank skill book box. And so he began to saw in panic as one of his viewers asked him how long he had been sawing the bars. So as Go Insun explained that he had been at it for a week, the viewer claimed that this was the reason for him being the only one left watching him. The young man was left clueless about the right action as the giant rock couldn't be moved, and he was too big to escape from the honey drain, which annoyed the viewer as the young man didn't have any logical idea. The last viewer then decided to stop watching our hero as he got back to his desk, claiming that there must be a reason behind the presence of the saw and ladder in the shop. After some time, the bar had been finally sawed, and with it, our hero fell to the ground. He then began to think of how this tool wasn't efficient enough as the second bar was only sawed after 10 days. And while Please Save Him began to wonder about a solution as he couldn't possibly saw 2 more bars, the system informed him that 85 users had already escaped the dungeon. Just as he began to panic, one of the viewers claimed that the ruler of hell was about to get him. After taking a moment to think, the young man climbed the ladder once again as the viewers called him out for sawing the bars for a very long time. But just then he realized Please Save Him suddenly got down the ladder, before swinging it with all of his strength in order to break it down. To the viewer's shock, all assumed that now, in a state of despair and hopelessness, he had given up to madness. It's just as the audience was confused, he began to rub the wooden pieces together in order to make a fire while some entities mocked him and others supported him. As the first sparks began to appear, he suddenly began to blow on the hardwood, when suddenly his hair caught on fire. As he screamed in pain, the viewers called him out for his madness. Just like that, the protagonist earned 4 balloons and gained 2 more members in his fan club. Seeing how his head had been set on fire, the young man decided to make the best of it and slam himself under the boulder, making his audience assume that he wanted to give up. When, to their astonishment, the giant boulder began to move. And just like that, our hero found himself victorious as the giant boulder fell to the ground. Please Save Him began to celebrate as his audience couldn't quite understand what happened. As the protagonist launched his head into the honey in order to heal himself, the audience urged him for an explanation, clarifying that the boulder wasn't a rock, but a turtle that had patterns on its shell and moved a little. Upon seeing this, a protagonist assumed that the obstacle wasn't a rock, but instead an animal. With that being said, he charged at the unlocked path after claiming that this dungeon has 4 themes, the 10 symbols of longevity, which confused the audience. So he explained when climbing up the window how, upon leading the keywords, he realized the theme of the dungeon. Seeing how it was explained that every object had a reason behind its presence and affirming that it was just a theory. Go In-sung was then left amazed, as he had now entered the treasure dungeon that would teleport him into the next dungeon after 2 hours with a single prize of his choosing. All were left amazed as the hero now had to choose between the many items, making them call him out for drawing on the treasure and praising him for his achievement. Please Save Me decided to think well before picking his prize, as every object had its purpose. He tried to see if money would bring him any good into this game, yet the audience refused to help once again. And so he decided to check the silver coin first, only for it to be a copper one that could be used at the hub and weighs 10 balloons. And as the item began to fade away, all began to laugh at him for his miserable choice. The protagonist, who realized that this room was filled with trickery, decided to look at the golden coin, only for it to be silver and it couldn't be used at the hub. The viewers began to mock him once again as he finally realized that within this game a place called the hub existed, and so he grabbed a sword with an attack of 5, before beginning to swing it around, thinking that it would be necessary for him to achieve victory. Well, suddenly the grumbling sound of the turtle's stomach echoed through the azure room. Go In-sung began to think of the item he should bring along, as only one could enter Dungeon 1 with him. Yet upon recording this room's description, he realized that a hidden treasure was under all of the items. And so he began to toss all of the items around and search for the real treasures, as the viewers commented on his actions once again. And after searching for some time, he was left exhausted, unable to find any real treasure, and with an indecent item in his hand, making the audience laugh at him. The protagonist knew very well that he was on the clock and that he needed to eat and rest for the next dungeon. First, he decided to cover bread with some honey and eat it, while the viewers began to laugh at him once again. Just then, he was approached by the animal, whom he realized desired a piece of his meal. Go In-sung decided to feed the giant reptile, only to find something inside its mouth, and when he tried to grab it, the viewers warned him against it, fearing that he would lose his hand. Even so, he managed to pull the item out without losing any of his limbs. The item that was in his hand was a rare one called the Orb of Capture that would allow him to tame a wild beast and return it to common rank upon feeding the item to it. The audience couldn't believe what they had just witnessed, while some couldn't even process what had just happened. With the chat window now available for 10 balloons, his first viewer gifted him 20. And as the young man began to analyze the orb, all began to comment on it, unable to believe that it was present in the first dungeon. Go In-sung began to recall its supposed effects. It was quickly filled with fear upon realizing that monsters would be awaiting him in the future dungeons, as the viewers urged him to pick it over the iron sword. Suddenly, the hero realized that the turtle had eaten and stolen his meal. Yet upon thinking of how this dungeon had been built around the 10 symbols of longevity, he screamed out of excitement, leaving his viewers confused. And so, upon explaining what the theme of the dungeon was once again to them, he claimed that the most important entity within the dungeon was none other than the turtle that he fed the rare orb, leaving the viewers astonished, thinking that this was a waste. and as all claimed that the turtle was about to suffer a miserable fate, it suddenly began to transform, taking a more giant and intimidating form. Just like that, the protagonist turned a giant spirit turtle into its companion, leaving his audience baffled once again. Go In-sung was left astonished by the great monster that was now under his control, only for it to go back to its childlike form, which was of common grade. Just like that, the creature had now gained a form even smaller than its original one. With that being said, the hero was now the owner of a common rank spirit total with a mythical hidden rank that had a Saleva with healing properties. Piss quickly assumed that Mythic must be one of the highest ranks in the game, and his theory was confirmed right upon seeing that one of the viewers began to praise him after giving him 5 more balloons. Go In-sung was now allowed to buy a bigger viewer capacity after receiving 100 recommendations. He then deeply thanked his audience, seeing how they made him level up. Yet the protagonist didn't feel so good, realizing that he had overdone himself by searching like a madman earlier, and so he collapsed on the ground, ultimately losing consciousness, only to be woken up later on by the sound of small creatures. The hero suddenly found himself in a plastic chair in front of a bunch of chicks. With this scenery in front of him, the protagonist assumed that he had dozed off a little at work. Go In-sung had the task of separating male chicks from females, which only a trained person could do. The females are taken care of in order to get raised, while the males, who can't lay eggs, are thrown away and killed. But in his moment of fatigue, something odd began to happen, as a sudden purple energy emerged out of nowhere claiming that male chicks also had a soul. Just like that, the dungeon escaper finally woke up. The hero was now in Dungeon 1-2, which was a food storage that he needed to escape yet couldn't take any edible item with him into the next one. Please Save Me just then recalled how it was stated that he would automatically enter this dungeon by stepping into the treasure chamber. He then turned around in confusion, realizing that he had been dreaming of his past due to the presence of chicks around while thinking that they were the food mentioned by the system. The protagonist realized that this room was almost like the first dungeon with only one difference, and that was that the ceiling was far higher than Dungeon 1. Please Save Me assumed that he had to go inside the gap in the ceiling, that he didn't know how as it was too far away. The audience was quickly left annoyed as the hero realized that he was wrong about the theme being the 10 symbols of longevity, as chickens weren't part of them. With that being said, he decided to come up with a solution, and judged it wise to punch through the wall, which greatly amused the audience. But after thinking for some time, he opted for seeing the items in the shop first. The present items were a thin rope, food for chickens, and something that accelerates growth. This made the hero realize that he had to take care of the chicks until they became adults. Yet he decided to grow the number of his audience first, and with the click of a button, he could now have a maximum audience of 20 viewers, which could be increased if he goes up the streamer ranks. Go In-sung was happy to see that 15 more people could now watch him, and so he claimed with a high voice and a confident tone that he shall not remain the last one anymore. Yet after this bold claim, some time had passed with some of the chicks reaching adult size. The bored audience decided to mock the name that he picked by mistake. The 1-you-want then began to cry, thinking of how the few ones who watched his stream were making a mockery out of him. And just as he began feeding the chickens, the bored audience called him out for wasting time by doing so on a daily basis. But as the protagonist claimed that he wanted them for their eggs, the audience had its doubts, claiming that all of them were males. Suddenly, just as he affirmed that all of them were, in fact, females, the first 2 users managed to exit the dungeon. All the viewers realized that something entertaining was about to happen as their dear buffoon was thrown into a state of panic. And they had passed, and the dungeon escaper was overjoyed to see that he had acquired the high nutritional eggs that would enhance his body according to the system. After some time, the hero finished his feast of boiled eggs. Go In-sung was now shirtless as he began to punch the wall once again. And while all were left amazed by his muscular body, the hero was now more determined than ever to exit last place as fast as possible. Despite the struggle, he was deeply focused on finally exiting the second dungeon. The audience began to cheer him on as he kept on going, making the ceiling fall. His fists were now covered in his own blood. The young man then had an idea upon looking at his new pet that was named Young Gui as it began to heal him. The protagonist gave the reptile chicken feed, which amazed the audience. Please Save Me. He didn't know if he should give it a try once again as he was now fully healed and the wall was on the brink of getting destroyed. But just then, the system notified him that only 66 more users could set foot in Dungeon 1-3, making him panic once again. And with the audience mocking him, he fell to his knees. Our hero, who was exhausted by all of his efforts, began to question his presence inside this mysterious dungeon. And so he began to wish for the ability to fly for a short amount of time, just like the chicken he had been raising. When suddenly, it occurred to him. The madman had an unusual, insane idea once again as he began to rip the feathers off the chicken to the audience's shock. They were even more baffled as he began to roll himself in the eggs. As he explained how he had used eggs in order to stick the feathers to him, all began to mock him for his ridiculous idea. Even so, the sane grown man, disguised as a giant chicken, launched himself into the air. Determined to test the accuracy of his theory, he tried to fly into the air. While that being said, the chicken man rushed to the top, beginning to think of how this situation would normally make him a laughingstock. and it might be just possible with the power given to him by the eggs as he launched himself to the top, thinking that he had the ability to fly. As he began to flap his wings, all were left amazed that just as he was about to reach the top, he fell down once again, just as everyone expected. As he crashed into the ground, he began to think of how odd it was that his strength suddenly left him. So he quickly assumed that it was because the feathers came from the chicken, meaning that each feather had a life force of its own. But upon thinking about it, he was suddenly struck with an idea. The hero then looked at the honey mischievously before deciding to apply it on himself. This substance, once well known for giving life force, left him surprised upon seeing the feathers becoming a part of his body. And just like that, to everyone's shock, the protagonist became half chicken as he gained his own wings. The young man then decided to purchase a rope in order to stabilize his newest limbs that the audience wanted to see him box the wall. But as he affirmed that he could lead to the top, the viewers assumed that he was once again on about the 10 symbols of longevity. The young man confirmed, claiming that this dungeon must be the one of the crane, leaving the audience confused as this animal was nowhere to be seen. And so the protagonist affirmed as he launched himself into the air that he himself was bound to become a creature as he began to fly up. The hero affirmed that he was going to use the body parts of the chicken in order to turn himself into the crane. With that being said, he rushed to the top once again. All were left amazed by this feat as he was more determined than ever to finally exit this place, and he did his best to flap his wings upward. The viewers began to praise him for his great use of the honey. As he finally reached his destination, the system informed our hero that if he gives away 10 balloons, he would be able to use special chat. And just then, his first viewer donated 50 balloons, asking the others to have faith in the streamer, who was happy with the actions of his first subscriber. One of the others was amazed. The system then notified him that he would now be entering Dungeon 1 to 4. This shocked him as he was supposed to enter 1 to 3, so it was explained how this was his reward for exiting the hard way. As the first user gave him 50 balloons once again, the others began to talk about how he might have now a target on his back as the King of Hell was watching. Yet upon seeing how baffled the hero was, the audience claimed that it was just joking. Meanwhile, in a castle hidden in the clouds at the end of a dark hallway, the strongest entity confirmed that it watched streams in secret and couldn't help but find the protagonist as the most entertaining streamer he had seen in a while. Shortly after, as our hero was lost in his thoughts, the viewers urged him to progress, and so he jumped down, leaving the comments utterly confused. Seeing how we had returned to Dungeon 1-2, the young man explained how he wanted to purchase chicken feed from the shop, and when asked for the reason behind it, he claimed that he didn't want the chickens to start. The hero then claimed that the rest of the food would go into his inventory, making the viewers realize that it would be used to feed the turtle. All were then amazed by his craftiness as he decided to take some chickens with him as additional food. Just then, one of the viewers reminded him that food couldn't exit Dungeon 1 to 2, which the hero was very well aware of, even though he flew the chicken in his mouth. And upon landing, he confirmed not having forgotten about this rule, while clarifying that it only applied between 1-2 and 1-3, thus he could take food with him into 1-4. Just like that, the hero was pleased to see that he got first place out of the 71s present for Dungeon 1 to 4. And while the protagonist was happy that his theory was on point, I was left amazed by his craftiness. Seeing how he was the first to enter this dungeon, our hero will now be receiving an F-rank skill box. But before receiving it, he decided to get himself right off the feathers, which was a painful process seeing how they had been merged with his body by the power of the honey. With that being said, the young one received the normal rank random scale box that had a 5% chance of giving him a scale advanced rank. Upon opening it, all were hoping for an evasion skill of advanced rank. Yet upon seeing how he had gotten a normal power that would reinforce his concentration, all judged that it was a decent reward. The protagonist quickly decided to accept it, and so he opened the book, as magic began to enter his mind. Just like that, our hero had acquired a new power that is fueled by stamina, and that goes up the ranks once maximum capacity is reached. Please Save Me was amazed by how clear and light his head was. With that being said, he decided to finally proceed through the dungeon, only to find purple lights. Enlightening his way, PS grew intrigued upon seeing that the dungeon was a path that needed intelligence and determination to pass after that prisoners used it to escape. With that being satisfied to take a look at the shop, and quickly realized that this dungeon was lethal seeing how armor was an option. And as he purchased the leather one, all began to call him out for being a cheap steak. With that being said, our protagonist made his first steps into the dungeon, but little did he know a giant axe was now above his head, without the hero quickly resorting to his new skill. In order to avoid a slashing death, the axe had missed him by a hair. Yet the overwhelmed hero was left terrified as the audience pointed out his great luck. This made him realize that this path was filled with traps. Just then, Please Save Me felt something coming his way. He was suddenly hit in the shoulder by something that turned out to be an auto. The audience began to comment on the shape of the arrowhead, claiming that it would be lethal if it touched the hero before laughing at him. Yet, as the protagonist fought throughout the way, he realized that what he had now was not enough, and with the weapon falling into the others, the protagonist apologized to his audience, claiming that the stream would get boring for a short while. Now, the protagonist had consumed a great amount of eggs. His speed had now been increased, and upon seeing this, he faked his tears, and as he thanked the audience for staying with him all along, which they were very well aware of. By consuming 20 more eggs of the muscular system, the protagonist managed to increase his level as well as the level of his kids, but he was now certain of his success, as he immediately dashed forward with his chickens in hand, leaving the audience confused. With that being said, his skill, strength, and focus of level 2 had been resorted to. The protagonist quickly escaped the axe he had already faced, and when confronted by the arrows, he launched the chickens out of the bag, making his audience call him out for his cruelty, seeing how he was using them as a meat shield against the bullets. The young man knew very well that what he did was totally wrong, when suddenly he felt something coming his way, something particularly long that he used his bare hands to stop the last moment. This unexpected feat left everyone amazed, and just like that, the chicken man had now acquired a weapon, which was a spear that he used to fend off the arrows. Even so, he missed one of the projectiles that managed to strike him in the back. Yet the young man's determination didn't waver, as he knew very well that running was his only option to win. With that being said, he charged out of the dungeon, and after much effort, he found himself confronted by a giant blade coming this way. And so at the last moment, he decided to try and parry it with his spear. Yeah, the audience knew very well that this was a bad idea. All were then left horrified upon seeing the feet of the young man getting slashed. But the audience was then suddenly relieved, as this was but an afterimage. With that being said, our hero finally arrived. He was now inside his safe zone. Please Save Me was overjoyed by the fact that he could take his breath after this hellish and deep parkour. Suddenly, he fell to the ground. His new skill had consumed too much of his stamina, leaving him the prize of any energy. The protagonist then realized that it was his first time touching sand after entering the hellish game. Sometime later, he woke up while his viewers called him out for sleeping too long. After standing up, the dungeon escaper realized that he was now in front of a giant structure, something so tall that it far surpassed the length of Dungeon 1 to 2. On that being said, the hero tried to force the door open, yet to no result. Just then, he realized that he needed a key with him, which left him startled, as the first arrow he threw away was, in fact, the key that he needed. And while some left, a viewer reminded him how he asked for the arrow to be kept. The young man claimed that he wouldn't be stepping foot in the Parkour once again, which left his audience disappointed. Goat and Sung then began to think of how there had always been multiple ways to escape in all the previous dungeons, and how he wasn't sure to find the key. Yet even so, he decided to check and quickly realized that only the first arrow could be used to unlock the door. Just then, a streamer named Instant Beauty entered the dungeon. Do you think our hero was amazed upon realizing that she was always among the first to clear the levels? And with the new streamer entering the dungeon, a new item could now be purchased in the store, which was none other than Channel Messenger, that allowed our hero to send 10 messages to other streamers for the cost of 1 balloon. Thus, he quickly bought it. The hero then quickly resorted to this new item. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the dungeon, the lady was intrigued by the kind of nonsense that awaited her in this dungeon, when suddenly, she received a notification. Instant Beauty was startled upon seeing how a complete stranger was trying to DM her. The young one was left happy upon seeing that the girl quickly replied, asking if he would truly be one of the 3 strongest dungeon escapists. Instant Beauty pointed out the nickname of Please Save Me, while secretly mocking him. But just then, as she stepped on the path, she felt something coming her way. The lady was suddenly hit by the key arrow that crashed right next to her on the ground. Instant Beauty quickly picked it up while wondering about the strange auto. And upon seeing how it injured her head, as the comments began to rush out at the auto for entering their streamer, she quickly got angry and threw the arrow away. Yet she quickly recomposed herself in front of the camera, thinking of how her anger almost revealed her true personality. With that being said, the hero assumed that the lady had other matters to attend to. So Instant Beauty explained to Please Save Me how she was hit by an arrow. But as the lady saw the protagonist deduce that she entered the path by getting it, she called him out in anger for not warning her in advance. Instant Beauty was then left intrigued as the other streamers began to question her about the form of the arrowhead. Yet to her shock, she only accepted to tell in exchange for another secret. And while the hero didn't really care about the auto, the girl decided to question the young one by firstly stating the truth regarding her discarding the arrow. Reading this made him chuckle, before bursting out in laughter, as he had completely expected this reaction, while his amused audience called his Earth name, which was Go, that translates to death. Instant Beauty, who took pride in the number of balloons she had, grew annoyed at the fact that the hero wanted to strike a deal. And when asked about the nature of the deal, the hero revealed it to be intel exchange, making the lady smirk, as she called out the protagonist for being in a state of hopelessness, making him grow annoyed as the viewers began to bully him once again. But Instant Beauty was startled upon learning that the arrow she just threw away was, in fact, the key to exit this dungeon. So she quickly began to question, Please Save Me, realizing that she was now desperate. With that being said, the streamer began to search for the arrow that she had just lost. when suddenly she slipped off the path, only to catch herself at the last second. As she regained the ground, she realized that the most influential person was the one with the most knowledge. With that being said, Instant Beauty finally decided to embrace shamelessness. And so she changed her tone and this time asked the protagonist nicely about the arrow. Yet before revealing any intel, the protagonist wanted to know how she managed to pass the third dungeon. Instant Beauty explained how she purchased a rope in order to climb the wall while asking the protagonist if he had resorted to the stairs. Hearing this made him realize that the only way to dungeon 1 to 3 was to overcome an obstacle, meaning that this dungeon must be themed after mountains, which was another one of the 10 symbols of longevity. The protagonist then smirked as he was asked about the function of the sad arrow, throwing the lady into a panic as he explained how it was the key to access the next dungeon. In a state of panic, Instant Beauty asked if she would see this arrow once again, but the protagonist denied. The lady then asked him if he wasn't also facing the same problem. Yet the protagonist affirmed that despite having thrown away the key, he didn't have a problem with it, leaving the girl to scream in frustration. As he ended this conversation, Go In-sung began to analyze the symbols that had appeared so far while thinking of the symbol of this dungeon. Yet as he tried to align everything around him with one of the symbols, he grew frustrated as he couldn't find any one of the remaining 7 that matched this environment. Meanwhile, Instant Beauty was annoyed by the fact she fell for the man's trick as he didn't give her any intel after revealing to him that she had lost her key. Even so, she decided to keep on going as every dungeon had multiple solutions in order to find the exit. The lady even had something that none other did, as she began to recall how men are always kind to her. Instant Beauty, who was known as Yahello, knew very well that she had the power to make any male have the desire to aid her. Meanwhile, her viewers were thrown into a fit of rage. One of them, named Prince of Heaven, gave her 15 balloons in order to comfort the girl who cried crocodile tears, pretending to be thankful. Another old man named Fieri, passionate youth, gifted her 20, claiming that it was the protagonist's fault for acting like a victim, earning him her thanks. Just then, her #1 fervent fan entered the comments upon hearing about the most recent events and demanding an explanation. The lady was quickly overjoyed by his presence, as Queen Bee was her only fervent fan who gained this title after sending her 1,000 balloons and watching her for 200 hours straight. And while sending 100 balloons, the fervent fan claimed that he wanted to know as "Please save me" bullies were once again, as he wanted to tear him apart. Yuvason accepted his help while thinking of how men always try to act strong. With that being said, she took a deep breath and tried to analyze the situation once again while thinking of how this path had been used by prisoners in order to escape. She theorized that the other streamer must not have escaped dungeon 1 to 4 yet due to the fact that he must also not have his key with him. With that, she took off her armor and began to undress, leaving her thirsty fandom overexcited. The viewers who were intrigued at first were quickly left baffled upon realizing the madness that she was about to commit. And just like that, after gathering her courage, Instant Beauty jumped off the path into the honey. Even after taking a good look at the shop, the protagonist was still unable to figure out the theme of the dungeon. With that, he began to wonder if the arrow he had wasted was truly the only way he could escape this dungeon. Meanwhile, back on the path, 2 feminine hands grasped the edge of the road. With that, the theory of Instant Beauty had been proved right. The lady realized that she could cross without detonating any by placing herself on the very edge of the pathway, earning herself the praise of her audience for this innovative initiative. So she explained how she had gotten the idea when she fell earlier while searching for the key arrow. But the only issue at hand was the tiring length of this path. Even so, the streamer would not waver as she was determined to keep on hanging until the end. Meanwhile, Go In-sung began to recall the themes of the past dungeons, in a desperate attempt to find which one of the 10 symbols of longevity represents this dungeon. And so he began to analyze his surroundings. But upon seeing that he couldn't make sense of it even after taking the shop items into consideration, the young man was left frustrated, causing him to break his arrow pen. But upon doing so, the dungeon escaper realized something important, which was that the arrow was made out of bamboo. Meanwhile, Instant Beauty found herself exhausted, yet she was determined to reach the end. But in the end, she found herself unable to complete it, leaving her forced to climb back up. And so she sat down in order to catch her breath, when suddenly something was fired in her way. Instant Beauty had been hit in the shoulder by an arrow, and with that being said, she fell off the path to the horror of her viewers. Back to the sealed exit of the dungeon. As the protagonist places bamboo arrows into the honey, the viewers called him out for always resorting to the healing elixir. The streamer reminded the audience that the honey provides life force, before planting the 2 arrows into the ground, and claiming that there was a reason behind the presence of dirt inside this dungeon, making the comments realize that he planned on growing bamboo and climbing them to the top. But just then, the comments began to wonder about the maximum length of an adult bamboo plant, and just as they affirmed to him that it would never be high enough, our hero was left devastated. Back to the girl who fell into the honey, Instant Beauty began to sink down into the liquid of life. This made her recall her days in the National Martial Arts Hapigo Dojo, where the students would receive rigorous training from an assertive instructor. A sensei questioned his students about the way to survive within the domain of a tiger, To which Johansson responded by affirming that one should become the beast itself. An answer that greatly pleased the teacher, as according to him, every problem possesses the solution. Yet the young girl asked her father about the way she could turn herself into the beast. And with that, Instant Beauty finally hit the bottom of the Honey River. Back to the door, our protagonist was left to think about how the average bamboo could only grow to a maximum of 5 meters tall when he needed more than 20. The hungry hero then decided to take out some bread from his inventory, only to realize that he still had some growth accelerant in it that multiplies the speed of maturation of all living beings except pets by 100. This gave Please Save Me an idea, as this elixir that turned chicks into chickens in 3 days could be used on the fast-growing bamboo, yet he was still unsure of the plant growth limit. Yet upon seeing that the other contestants had begun to enter the dungeon, the hero had no choice but to try. So he reached into his inventory and sprinkled the plants with the growth accelerant, making them have a sudden and impressive growth spurt. Meanwhile, Instant Beauty regained her way to the surface, and after taking some time to catch her breath, she pulled out the arrow from her shoulder. Johansson was determined more than ever to exit this dungeon, even if the price to pay was to become a beast herself as she began to swim through the honey. Meanwhile, the madman grabbed the bamboo plants and held on to them as they began to grow towards the top, leaving the audience excited by his exceptional achievement. Please Save Me felt glad to have consumed so many eggs from the muscular system, as it gave him the strength to keep on holding to the bamboo that was getting thicker and harder to grasp. Just like that, our hero finally arrived at the entrance of Dungeon 1 to 5 and was the first to conquer a dungeon once again. It's the shock of the audience the streamer kept on holding to the growing bamboo instead of hopping onto the bridge. Go-In-Sung explained that there was a good reason for him to keep on climbing, as he had noticed the presence of Hannibals a little while ago, meaning that they were a way for him to climb and reach a hidden item. The audience was shocked to see that the streamer was right upon seeing him stumble upon a concealed trap, and so he quickly opened it and began to search the hidden space, until he finally placed his hand on the hidden treasure. The protagonist promised the audience, who was eager to see his new find, to show it to them after regaining the bridge, which was convenient seeing how he was directly above it. And so the madman let go of the trap, before landing unharmed like a superhero, because apparently eggs turn people into Superman. And with that, the hero took a look at his new found, which was the rare heavenly bamboo fruit, which is only produced by heavenly bamboo trees and the favorite food of the phoenix, as well as a great health restorer for a strong enough body. This earned him the praise of the audience, yet one viewer affirmed that he might never meet the phoenix. And so he decided to save the hidden treasure into his inventory. It began to wonder if the exit in front of him wasn't another trap, but he quickly ditched the idea, deciding to pay it no mind, and decided to go through it. Just like that, Go-In-Sung felt happy upon having finally reached Dungeon 1 to 5, but to his shock, his rise to the next dungeon was met by a sudden fall. Back to Dungeon 1 to 4, Johansson sat on the stairs trying to readjust her shoulder. Her injury had been healed thanks to the honey she had with her. The lady, who was shocked by the presence of staircases, was certain that they must lead towards the exit, and she decided to jump off once again in order to take care of an urgent matter. After submerging herself, Instant Beauty began to search for the key arrow that she previously threw away. She also felt grateful, as her task had been greatly eased by the glowing rocks that illuminated the bottom of the lake. And after a quick search, the arrow had been located. The satisfied girl emerged from the glowing liquid with a satisfied expression on her face. She then began to climb the stairs with the arrow in hand, as all she had to do left was to peacefully reach the top and use the key after retaking the path in order to escape 1 to 4. Meanwhile, back to our tormented hero in Dungeon 1 to 5. The protagonist kept screaming as he found himself sliding in a small tunnel and hitting his head. And just as it began to seem that this hellish slide would never end, Please Save Me finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And with that being said, he readjusted his posture in order to execute a successful landing. The protagonist found himself in an odd environment, and to his intrigue, a full moon illuminated the dungeon. Meanwhile, Instant Beauty was notified that the hero was the first player out of 50 to reach 1 to 5, meaning that he will be rewarded with a random skill box. Seeing how he was the first to escape once again, she had no choice but to acknowledge his potential. Yet even so, the competitive tiger was determined to catch up to him as fast as possible. Instant Beauty was also certain that all other contestants on the same floor as her shared the same competitive feeling, which turned out to be right, as a player with green hair was greatly annoyed by the protagonist, as well as another one who was trying to walk on the edge of the path in order to avoid traps. A girl claiming that the cape was the only reason behind her survival began to wonder about the insane speed of Please Save Me. Meanwhile, PS was happy with himself, as along with having accumulated 900 balloons, he had found the hidden treasure and earned himself a skill book as well. So he decided to save the fruit for a dire situation and unlock his new skill, which turned out to be Iron Will, which left the audience amazed. Seeing how much his viewers were impressed, the young man assumed that he had stumbled upon an excellent skill, and so he quickly learned it without giving it a second thought. Iron Will, that will evolve after reaching the max level, had the ability to double the physical stats of the user for 180 seconds before death. The hero was left baffled as the audience who just pranked him affirmed that he would have ended up just like them upon using the skill. As the hero realized that this skill could end his life, the viewers claimed that it was a powerful skill that would reveal its usefulness later on, leaving him overexcited, only to learn later on that they were just messing with him, leaving the bullied one frustrated by these odd actions. Go In-sung was then left shocked upon seeing that the system allows him to invoke a manager, and upon looking at the options of the Sansa River TV store, the hero realized that it was meant to give the player some sort of control over the game while many viewers were begging to be summoned. Even so, our hero aimed to invoke the person who provided him balloons and attention from the beginning of his journey. So when asked to pick a manager, the hero called out Self-Reflection, his first viewers, which was a choice that everyone understood very well. Upon summoning him, the system informed our hero that he needed to have a higher beige rank in order to summon more managers. And so it began, as an enormous beam of light appeared in front of our hero, and from it, a figure appeared, which was none other than the manager. The old man began to wonder about the last time something similar occurred to him. Our hero was shocked to see that his manager wasn't Korean, as well as the rest of the audience seeing how Self-Reflection should be on STYX TV instead of Sansa River. The hero was also intrigued by the outfit of the old man. This made him doubt their ability to communicate with each other. Self-Reflection asked the hero if he was disappointed with him being an old man who didn't belong to the same country as him, which he politely denied. With that being said, the old man introduced himself using his username, before affirming to the protagonist that he was once known as Socrates. The hero was baffled to see that he was now in the presence of the great Greek philosopher, who called him out for his reaction, implying that he had never met a dead man before. Yet the young man affirmed that it was truly his first meeting with the dead, before asking Self-Reflection for the reason behind his fluent Korean. So the old one explained that he needed hobbies, seeing how he had spent 2,000 years inside this place, earning him a mockery of the viewers for being so ancient. This baffled the protagonist, as Socrates managed to stay here for such a long time without escaping. So upon hearing this, the old man burst out in laughter upon realizing that the young man assumed that they were in hell, before claiming that this name was more fit for Earth. Socrates explained how an immense sum is spent on a man just after his birth, which keeps up until college. And even if life smiles on one, ensuring him a nice position, he would still be unable to afford a house of his own. On top of that, people will start to judge him once in a coffin bought by the same loved ones who paid for the funeral, making it a miserable existence. Go In-sung understood very well the point that the philosopher was trying to make. But when the young man asked the old one if he could appear in another form, Socrates, along with the viewers, quickly realized that he was annoyed by his advanced age. And just as the two of them began to argue, the old one mocking the young, which pleased the fans, a sudden sound coming from behind startled our hero. To his shock, a rotten creature began to drool as it laid its eyes upon him. And to the streamer's horror, the said creature attacked, aiming to bite him in the arm. The philosopher asked him to get rid of it in order to avoid further damage, and so he lifted it by the head, in order to get its teeth off of his flesh, before slamming it into the ground. Go In-sung began to wonder about the nature of the attacker, which surprised the old man as this was clearly a zombie. Self-Reflection then explained that this undead could only be put down via the destruction of his head, meaning that it would begin to move once again in about 30 minutes, which greatly annoyed the hero. Socrates explained how the hero should try to flee from the undead as he tries to cross the dungeon, before pointing out the great amount of blood he was losing. Upon seeing this, the hero reached into his inventory and pulled out his turtle. And while he claimed that it should heal his wound in order to repay him for the food, the audience called him out for only giving his pet chicken feed. Go In-sung was shocked by how fast he had been restored to full health, before pointing out the poor state of his outfit. And so he let go of the armor in order to go for the spare clothes in his inventory, while Socrates called him out for knowing about his own ugliness, which the entire fandom agreed with. The young man then placed his healing turtle on his shoulder, as it would be of great use. He then decided to look at the shop, wondering about the weapon he should choose, so when asked if he had any knowledge regarding armed combat, the protagonist affirmed that he was a total ignorant. So Socrates suggested that he buy the spear, as it is a cheap, easy to use, and the first weapon in history, before claiming that swords required mastery and bows only work at long range. With that, only one issue remained at hand, which was to pick up the most adequate spear, with the most expensive being the 800 balloon worth diamond spear. Socrates, who pointed out that they didn't know anything about the dungeon, proposed to go for the cheap bamboo spear, which didn't satisfy the audience as it was too fragile. The rusty spear was proposed, which displeased the viewers once again, seeing how the iron spear was better and was just a little more expensive. Yet just as he was about to go for the steel one, the audience pressured him into getting the hard steel spear. The angry protagonist decided to comply once again with their demands, only for the audience to criticize him once again and demand a better spear, With that being said, he decided to go for the most expensive weapon, yet just as he was about to buy it, he was suddenly stopped by the users once again, leaving him annoyed, so the comments proposed to persuade the manager into buying the spear, an idea that greatly pleased our hero. And so he tried to nicely beg the manager for the desired item, only to be met with a ferocious death stare that made him buy the 800 balloon worth spear himself, as they criticized him for his poor begging skills. Go In-sung was pleased with the diamond spear, as its attack efficiency was more than double that of the iron sword he found in Dungeon 1-to-1 treasure room, as well as a boost when thrown. With the spear now in hand, the audience praised him for his powerful look, as some claimed that it was due to his buff physique. As Socrates pointed out that it was almost night time, the hero suggested proceeding. The system asked them in the hexagon in order to enter the dungeon. It was then revealed that one could choose the difficulty ranging from beginner to advanced, with the rewards becoming greater as the difficulty increases. Upon seeing that he could choose the difficulty, our hero's mind was made. But before he could utter a word, the old man demanded the difficulty to be set to advanced. The hero tried to explain his mind to the philosopher, who kept on requesting the same difficulty, yet assumed that his words were pointless as he was the manager. And just as he was about to ask for the beginner difficulty, the system set the dungeon to advanced just as the old man requested, leaving him utterly shocked. Self-reflection then began to criticize the streamer for fleeing to easiness and abandoning the great rewards. With that being said, our heroes were transported to Dungeon 1-5, which was a maze that many prison runaways found to be their death grounds, as the full moon kept watching them in this dungeon where only a wise one with strength could exit. The hero was particularly intrigued by the dungeon allowing 4 people in, so the old man explained how he could have more allies by his side. Just then, the protagonist was urged to be wary, as they were found by a horde of undead that immediately charged at the young flesh. In-sung tried to defend himself by using his spear. The hero tried to take out as many zombies as he could, and after butchering a few of them, the audience informed the injured spearman about aerial attack. Just then, he was kicked in the face by a flying zombie. With that, the streamer fell to the ground, and was now at the mercy of the undead. And just as he assumed that he would finally receive his true demise, he found the disappointed old man floating between the zombies, leaving him quite shocked. Just then it happened, and the spirit of the old man entered the young one's body. The horde was left intrigued, only for those who were about to feast upon the streamer to be blasted away. The 2,000-year-old Socrates decided to showcase his skills to the protagonist after taking control of his body. As the zombies attacked, the Greek philosopher braced himself and asked the young one to observe him well. As the first one charged at him, Socrates executed a swift movement in order to dodge the creature, before readjusting his position and swinging his weapon with all his might, in order to slash the monster's back, leaving the audience somewhat impressed. But as another one tried to take him from behind, the grandpa braced himself before decapitating the monster, and ultimately killing him in one hit, earning himself the cheers of the other viewers who were astonished by his performance. The old man then decided to address the true owner of the body, before pointing out his great reflexes and observational skills, as well as the buff physique he obtained by consuming so many eggs. According to Socrates, an undead that misses his attack couldn't readjust himself for another, which is why he advised the young one to evade before launching a counterattack, which one of the viewers recognized as a boxing technique. Just then, the next wave of zombies charged at the young flesh. The hero was confused as the old man asked him to ready his weapon. Socrates firmly affirmed that the young one should take control of his body already, as he had already taught him how to deal with the undead. As one of the monsters attacked, the hero evaded his attack, before stabbing him in front of the impressed audience, yet as he kept on torturing the night creature, the audience criticized him for solely focusing on him. This left the protagonist happy, as he could sense his strength focus reach level 3. Just then, the comments asked him to focus on his behind, as the demons he had already killed were reassembling themselves. This left the hero annoyed and angry, so it was explained to him how they would keep fighting until their heads were destroyed and instructed to use the holy water. The use of the holy liquid sounded like a good idea for the hero, as the viewer who offered it to him mockingly explained that it wasn't a drink, and so he decided to only use a small amount, as this item was precious. But upon placing a drop on the zombie, it suddenly woke, leaving the protagonist terrified, which greatly amused the audience. And so, in a moment of panic, he filled the mouth of the monster with holy water, causing it to finally go into dust. The protagonist began to panic as, seeing the price of the holy water, and that it takes an entire bottle to slay a zombie, he realized that he could only take out 15 of them. The zombies were getting close. Socrates explained to the young one that a well-informed man is always powerful, making Go In-sung draw a pretentious image of the philosopher in his mind as he asked him to elaborate. The old one then pulled out the pet turtle from the inventory using the body of the young man before explaining how it was from the lineage of the black tortoise. And just as the animal was placed on the ground, the shocked creature was terrified to the audience's shock. The pet began to showcase a new set of powers that left its owner baffled, as it suddenly began to absorb the horde of zombies. This made the streamer realize that his pet was truly from the black tortoise, who, according to Socrates, is a yin that opposes the yang of the vermilion bird. In other words, this creature was a beacon of light even in the darkness of the undead, according to the old man, who the viewers praised for being a great polyglot and a formidable historian. He decided to simplify it down for the young man as he explained how the turtle absorbed evil energy and let out the good souls towards heaven, which go compared to photosynthesis, which the philosopher, along with the rest of the audience, found simple and laughable. As it finished its meal, the owner of the turtle claimed that he didn't grasp its true nature, as it was a mystic beast, making the 2,000-year-old stream viewer regret giving it chicken feed. Go In-sung apologized for his mistakes, which pleased Socrates and the rest of the viewers, as this one could at least admit his mistakes. The protagonist assumed at the beginning of his journey that self-reflection was but a rich viewer, and so he thanked him for all the help he had provided, which Socrates judged to be pointless. The young one then asked for a way to exit the dungeon, so the man from ancient Greece recalled the tale of the maze of Theseus. The hero quickly realized that he was referring to the part where the young man used a thread in order to find the exit, which gave him an idea. And so he began to trace his way using breadcrumbs that wouldn't be eaten by the life forms of 1-5, according to Socrates, while the viewers related this to Hansel and Gretel more than Theseus. But just then, the madman received a notification, alarming him that Instant Beauty had set foot in this dungeon while walking into the maze. The hero began to wonder if Instant Beauty was aiming to escape the dungeon alone, seeing how she'd been in there for 48 hours and hadn't established contact yet. Even so, 1-5 must be wanting the players to team up, seeing how it had required a certain number of people, so he decided to contact her first, but quickly ditched the idea, fearing that she might double-cross him. And so he and his manager kept walking. Go In-sung also noticed that the moonlight of the dungeon was losing strength, yet the moon itself was rendered immobile. He also realized that if he wasn't near the monsters, they wouldn't seek him. As of this, beasts only relied on their sense of smell. The streamer then spotted a massive gathering of monsters nearby, and so he decided to go in a different direction. But the philosopher insisted on facing them head-on. Out here, he tried to argue that they should economize their energy, making Socrates call him out for always trying to take the easy path. Later on, we see our hero trying the easy path he chose, only to be left disappointed as, after walking for 60 minutes straight, he was met with a dead end once again, which pleased the old man who was ignored. Go In-sung tried to argue that monsters were present at the scene, so the philosopher explained that there must be a reason for their unusual gathering. Just then, the hero noticed and was left horrified, as the breadcrumbs he had left behind had totally disappeared. The hero suspected that the culprits were the monsters, yet Socrates affirmed that monsters don't consume bread, leaving the hero even more annoyed. But just then, he was attracted by an unexpected voice that turned out to be human. The protagonist suspected that this was Instant Beauty, and his doubts turned out to be right. Just like that, Please Save Me, Instant Beauty had finally stumbled upon each other. Johansson was rather intrigued as the #1 player, who relies mostly on strength, didn't have a bulky and monstrous build as she expected, but rather a nice body. Just then, our hero noticed that the girl must have a lot of balloons, seeing how she was armed with the indestructible sword that caused about 1,600. Socrates explained that the lady was obviously possessed by her manager. Yet as they began to mock the old man for acting as if he was just overwhelmed by her presence, the girl called him out, claiming that he was attracted to younger girls, which greatly displeased him. The philosopher wanted the streamer to ask Instant Beauty about the missing bread, and so both were about to speak at the same time, only for Johansson to politely allow them to speak first. And so the protagonist asked her if she had eaten any breadcrumbs from the ground recently, which was a question so dumb that it irritated the girl, and when asked again, she burst out in anger at the protagonist, claiming that she wasn't poor enough to do that, claiming that she still had a lot of bread from the past dungeon, which the audience of our hero agreed with, seeing how she was certainly the richest among the two. Go In-sung affirmed to Johansson that none were spared from sin, and that redemption was the only way for one to still be worthy of living, which the manager agreed with. To the philosopher's shock, he was asked to stay silent by someone who was 2,000 years younger than him. This led to a huge argument breaking out between him and Instant Beauty as they began to insult each other. At the end of it, the girl was left greatly irritated, only to then notice a small turtle on the hero's shoulder that she quickly asked about. Go In-sung clarified that his pet was a mystical tortoise, which was a detail of little importance to the girl who accused it of being the gluten that ate the breadcrumbs. The hero explained that as a mystical creature, it doesn't eat bread, and even if it did, he wouldn't have prevented it, making the fans mock him for giving it chicken feed. This greatly angered the girl, seeing how she was the primary suspect of her stupid pet that suddenly lashed out at her, leaving her utterly shocked, as according to the fans, it was the first time she had angered someone. And with that being said, the little turtle began to scream at the adventurer, earning the praise of the audience. Instant Beauty then quickly called out her manager, Queen Bee, for help, seeing how she was losing the argument miserably. Yet to her shock, it turned out that the philosopher knew very well of her manager and disliked him as well. Socrates urged the girl to summon her manager, who had been creating a lot of problems recently. With that being said, the hero decided to believe the story of the girl, claiming that she didn't eat the breadcrumbs, leaving her angered as she was telling the truth. Even so, the hero decided to apologize for his words, claiming to have shown impoliteness during their first meeting, which somewhat pleased the girl. The main streamer then explained that the dungeon allowed a maximum of 4 people inside it, most wanting them to work together in order to conquer it. Johansson affirmed that this idea had occurred to her mind as well. The hero proposed to take the easy path away from the monster, yet the lady opted for the fight as their gathering must have a reason. Socrates then called out the hero as even his new ally had a better logic than him. And with that being said, they went on their way. Later on, the madman explained to the crazy girl how the zombies only relied on their sense of smell, which was a fact she was already aware of. This left him amazed by her great deductive skills and abnormal intellect. He then suggested that they should kill a number of demons equal to each other. With that being said, the lady quickly charged up ahead and decapitated her first foe with her indestructible sword. If a great speech she had showcased left the spearman stunned. The tiger lady then jumped into the air before slashing a zombie in half. Even if covered in blood, Instant Beauty didn't waver. While her newest victim was struggling in pain, Go In-sung urged himself to kill more demons than her, as he resorted to level 3 of strength and focus, in order to charge ahead into the horde of the undead. And so he stabbed his first zombie with such precision that he left the girl amazed. The hero smugly allowed her to thank him later, leaving her irritated, before selecting the next target that was heading towards him, and slashed it in half with a single swing, allowing the protagonist to increase his kill count by 1. Please Segmi's amazing performance made the audience compare him to Zhao Yun, who streams on Changshan and Sans River as well. With that, the protagonist thanked his audience for staying alongside him during the fight. The Tiger Lady also thanked her viewers as well while being pleased by the generous donation they had made. After the battle, our spearman was left intrigued, as the box that the lady asked him to open seemed to be the item that the zombies were trying to guard. And so he decided to look inside the box, only to find a mysterious scroll that turned out to be a map leading to the exit of the dungeon that would act as a zombie attractor. Go In-sung decided to use it, only to be stopped by the lady who reminded him that they would become targets to monsters. But just then, one of the defeated zombies began to twitch. The streamer decided to save the map for later. The girl then stated that they should split the cost of the required holy water in order to kill the monsters. This made the protagonist crack a pretentious smile, as he asked her about the number of bottles she had in her possession, which turned out to be 5. The hero proposed to take care of the cleanup in exchange for some holy water, as he didn't have any on him, which made the lady realize that he wanted the precious liquid in order to hydrate himself. Go In-sung asked her if they had come to an agreement, and Suk Johansson accepted to let him destroy the undead. With that, the little turtle was placed on the ground, as it immediately began its neat trick. This shocked Instant Beauty, so the hero explained how the ancestor of his pet was the black tortoise. The mystical turtle began to feast upon the undead creature, and after a short while, it had eaten every zombie in the blink of an eye with her increased eating speed, leaving only one. But just then, the hero began to wonder about the reason behind the undead's precise attack despite only relying on their sense of smell. And so before the turtle could finish its meal, its master suddenly interrupted it, which intrigued his ally as the monster was about to be reactive. But to her confusion, he reached into his inventory, and when questioned about it, the streamer revealed that the item in his hand was the heavenly bamboo fruit that he presented as a rare item characterized by its immense life energy, and so the rare fruit had been given to the manager. As he was asked to stay by the side of a lady, the philosopher was left confused as he had no idea what the young one had in mind. When suddenly the zombie launched himself once again, charging at his target. The dead man demanded an explanation, only to be suddenly assaulted by the zombie. The angered Greek punched the creature, affirming that he was already dead. Yet the monster attacked once again, leaving the tiger lady no choice but to intervene and slash the head of the monster, making it fall dead once again on the ground. Socrates couldn't understand at first why the zombie attacked him who was already in the realm of the dead, but then quickly realized what was truly happening. The hero confirmed his doubts as he explained that these creatures didn't rely on smell but on life energy detection. And when he explained that this would allow them to come up with a plan to read the map in peace, the manager quickly realized that he would have to keep the fruit with him in order to lure the monsters away. The Greek asked the Korean if he was truly ready to sacrifice something as valuable as the heavenly bamboo fruit, yet the hero affirmed that he wouldn't be sacrificing it, as the philosopher would only eat a small piece and roam around the dungeon until his life energy faded away. Go In-sung found his plan to use the manager to bait the monsters away perfect. Yet Socrates refused to comply, leaving the young one shocked. And so when asked about his refusal to contribute, self-reflection affirmed that Queen Bee should also play the bait as well. And so he urged the streamer to call out her manager in order to split that task, which the hero agreed with. With that being said, Queen Bee was asked to show herself, and so the one from Ethics finally appeared. Upon seeing him, the old man's doubts had been confirmed, as the two of them seemed to be acquainted. Plato, the disciple of Socrates, had made his appearance, As master and disciple acted as if they were happy to have been reunited, the audience found their acting a little odd. Instant Beauty was shocked to see that her manager was a famous Greek philosopher. Socrates immediately lashed out at his students for what he had been doing away from their national television. The master knew very well that his student didn't have the courage to face him in the afterlife. And when Plato claimed that he should be asking the old man for the reason behind his presence, to which he replied by claiming that it's his hobby, which is shared by his student. But the old man affirmed to the less ancient one that asking a girl to twerk live shouldn't be a way of passing time, which made the audience burst out in laughter. The old man then sent his student 10 balloons for his so-called notion of platonic love, making the audience point out his perverted side that never showed itself in his philosophy. Instant Beauty was particularly angry at him for lying to her despite being a big celebrity. But Plato affirmed that his past life on Earth is of no importance, claiming that he was now a new person and a loyal servant at her heel, earning himself the fist of his teacher. Instant Beauty decided to hold off the 2,000-year-old shenanigans in order to vote for a bait. But the old man affirmed that there was no need as the choice was obvious the moment her manager revealed himself. And so having realized that he had total dominance and authority over the other philosopher, self-reflection declared that Queen Bee shall play the bait. While he hides comfortably in the body of the hero, the streamers were then asked to engrave the map into their memory. Go In-sung had no idea how long the map could be opened while his ally urged him to hurry. And so the cursed map had finally been opened. And to the young one's shock, it was pretty complex. The system then notified them that 73 monsters were 20 seconds away. But as they tried to hurry in memorizing, the system suddenly notified them that more than 1,000 monsters were heading their way, leaving the young ones baffled. Instant Beauty urged the hero to close the map, leaving him confused, as she urged him to close the map, seeing how she had fully engraved it in her mind. And so he quickly did what he was asked, before asking the younger manager to consume the life energy fruit. And so Plato took a single bite. Before running away in order to fulfill his role as bait, the philosopher realized that he would meet a rather painful carnage if they caught up to him. And so he began to run as fast as possible, determined to survive in order to get revenge on his master. With that being taken care of, Instant Beauty began to give directions, yet the hero still had his doubts. So the angry Johansson affirmed that she was a celebrity in the Korean university. And with that, she began to lead the way. The both of them rushed to the exit as they followed the directions that she had memorized. And after some time, and many turns, the streamers had arrived at the exclamation mark that was present on the map, meaning that the exit was nearby according to the lady, and after the last straight line. The objective was now in sight, yet upon stepping on it, the system informed our heroes that this hexagon leads to the waiting room of the dungeon where they weren't allowed anymore. This left the streamers shocked as they had returned to the starting point, and while both of them were confused, the hero pointed out to Instant Beauty how she tried to step into the exit before him, meaning that she tried to double-cross him and take first place, yet she affirmed that it wasn't her intention. And as he declared that humans weren't worthy of trust, Johansson affirmed that she had no ulterior motives as such. But just then, the protagonist noticed something odd, as the breadcrumbs he had left behind vanished once again. With that, the protagonist finally realized what was happening, making the swordsman urge him to share his discovery, so he explained how it had something to do with symmetry. Hearing this left the girl confused, and so he drew a representation of the dungeon on the ground in order to clarify his point, as he explained that due to the symmetry of the dungeon, it was possible to exchange the locations of the starting and finishing points without anyone noticing. And while the girl found this to be unfair, the hero explained that it wasn't different from the past dungeons. This discovery earned him the praise of his manager. Go In-sung lashed out at the philosopher who didn't help them despite knowing the whole truth, so the old one explained how he would have been severely punished for giving them the answer. The boy even realized that the man hid inside his body in order to spare himself from the meaningless effort, which made the fans point out how much of a troll he was. The young man realized that they had to cross the entire map, as the girl affirmed that it was possible since she had it engraved in her memory. But it would be of no use seeing how the exit and entrance were switching places. Just then, the exclamation mark had been set off. The system informed them that their stay near the entrance was annoying the Great Spectre, an entity that our hero had no idea about. The moonlight then lost some of its strength, which allowed the monsters to acquire a higher degree of freedom. The streamer was left confused as the system claimed that going to the hole in the middle was the only way to preserve their lives. But just then, the Great Spectre was resurrected, leaving our hero horrified, as it was a monstrous creature with a cursed colossal size, to the point where our heroes didn't know if they could beat it, a doubt that was shared with their audience. Instant Beauty affirmed that they should retreat, yet the hero explained that they had nowhere to go. But she had to remind him how the system urged them to go to the center of the map, which is a safe zone to the hero, who was startled by the manager, who affirmed that he will hide in the hero's body in order to avoid running. And while one of the viewers accused him of riding on the back of the protagonist, another had to remind him of the importance of showing respect to older people. As the monster charged at them, our heroes began to run for their lives, and after endless running, the two of them were finally at the center of the map, yet they arrived exhausted. Shortly after, the madmen realized that something was odd. before explaining how the moon was smaller when they first arrived, and with that, the old man decided to exit his body. Socrates was happy to see his streamer arrive at a conclusion, so upon seeing how the undead were unable to enter the center of the dungeon, the hero realized that the theme of 1-5 was the moon, which annoyed the audience as he was once again bringing up the 10 symbols of longevity despite it being right. Go In-sung recalled the announcement that stated that the monsters gained more freedom as the light got weaker, meaning that the center was a safe zone and had the most moonlight, before claiming that since this is a copy of the moon, its light would shine forever. Yet the girl explained that the light was getting weaker despite the moon not changing forms, so the protagonist related it to its gain in size. Just then, our heroes were discovered by the Great Spectre. The protagonist explained that they might have a way out of this mess, so the girl asked him to enlighten her. Go In-sung explained how the more the moon gained in size, the weaker its glimmer gets. He compared it to a light bulb placed in many bags, making the lady realize that they needed to destroy the extra layer so that the moon could shine with its full power. Just then, something began to grow out of the giant zombie's hand. Fearsome tentacles quickly emerged and made their way into the light in order to kidnap the swordsman. With that, the lady was now fully in its grasp. Yet she didn't give up as she drew out her sword and stabbed the tentacle with it. This led the giant in pain to throw her away, smashing her into the ground. The protagonist quickly checked on her, but upon seeing that she didn't respond, the audience assumed that she was done for and that Please Save Me was next. The streamer quickly realized that fighting the monster would result in his demise, which is why he decided to go for the logical option instead and throw a spear at the moon that was far up in the sky. With that being said, he gathered his strength and launched his weapon with all of his might, making it go high into the sky. But just as it seemed that the spear was about to reach the moon, it suddenly fell back to the ground. Go In-sung realized that he didn't use enough strength before noticing that the light was getting scarcer. With that being said, one of the viewers assumed that this was the end of the Please Save Me stream. Socrates advised him to purchase the indestructible spear, so the young one begged him to get it for him instead. The philosopher affirmed that he wasn't a man that would spoil his streamer for no reason, while the protagonist began to panic as the Great Spectre was approaching. Yet the old man didn't care, claiming that he does not waste his money on idiotic ideas and that Please Save Me would meet his demise here if he doesn't present a genius idea. With that and his friend down, the young man was left in a tough situation, and so he decided to try a hasty, desperate move, as he threw his weapon with all of his strength towards the monster. The audience was amazed by the streamer's power as he managed to pierce the tentacles of the colossal zombie. A spear then continued its course towards the skull of the undead, only for the spear to break upon impact, which was expected by the audience as the Great Spectre was a powerful entity. With that, our spearman had lost his main weapon, and so the monster used his tentacles to attack once again. Yet the protagonist wasn't going to surrender so easily, as he dodged the extra limbs of the terrifying creature at the last moment and landed right next to the unconscious instant beauty. Go In-sung then grabbed her indestructible sword in order to cut down one of the tentacles, which excited one of the viewers as his dear streamer was struggling for his life, seeing how his body parts were being cut off. The Great Spectre entered a bloodlusted state of anger, which didn't escape the fans. But even so, our hero didn't succumb to fear as he turned on his strength and focus level 3 in order to stand his ground. With that being said, the young man charged at the terrifying entity, certain that it possessed a weakness that he could expose, use, and strike like his reproductive part. The Great Spectre tried to defend itself by using its powerful tentacles, only for the protagonist to escape through the air, before slashing them all off. The hero felt overexcited that the monster's intimacy was almost in his hands, but just then, the tentacles grabbed his feet. Before picking him into the air, Go In-sung found himself unable to see this attack coming despite having activated his level 3 strength and focus. Just then, the young one was ferociously slammed into the ground, making him cough blood after the powerful impact. The beast then lifted him into the air once again before throwing the protagonist away, making the audience assume that their streamer won't be able to escape 1-5 alive. The throw was so powerful that it made the hero lie down next to Johansson, which some viewers found to be cute. But with the monsters charging in, the comments were left intrigued as the protagonist was still not moving. Yet just as he was about to face his last moment in the afterlife, his heart suddenly began to pound oddly as the skill Iron Will had been triggered. With that, all the damage that the protagonist had taken had been cancelled. Go In-sung finally regained consciousness, as he had 3 minutes left as all his stats had been increased. With that, the protagonist got back up on his feet, still amazed by the fact that he had returned from the brink of death while his audience was eager to see his performance under the effect of Iron Will. Yet our hero was displeased, as even with all of his attributes multiplied by 2, he was still no match for the Great Spectre, meaning that he had to aim for the moon once again. But just then, the zombie attacked him. Only this time the tentacles were slashed with great ease to the viewer's amazement, as the giant beast screamed in pain. Please Save Me was well aware that he couldn't use the slash for the used blade in his hand to stab the moon, which meant that he needed the most expensive spear. But when he turned around and begged Socrates for it, the man hid in order to give the hero some tough love. Yet just as he began to lose all hope, a certain someone gave him a gift. This someone turned out to be Johansson, who gave him just enough money to buy the indestructible spear. The hero then turned to his partner, who gave him a thumbs up, which left him baffled, before explaining that even if they were bound to meet their doom, they should at least pour their souls into their last battle, despite speaking for her own good in reality. With 150 seconds out of 180 having passed for Iron Will, the lady took back her sword, explaining that she would hold off the creatures, before urging him to destroy the moon. With that being said, the hero resorted to the shop in order to buy his desired weapon. And just like that, Please Save Me had now acquired the indestructible spear that was blessed with insane stats, which left him amazed. The streamer got himself back together. With that being said, he dashed towards the monster that the lady was supposed to hold off, leaving her horrified. The great spectre tried to smash the young man with its hand, only for him to evade at the last moment and jump into the air in order to climb up the terrifying creature's arm. The spectre tried to smash the bug crawling towards its head, only for the bug to escape with his great speed. After having arrived at the shoulder, Go In-sung jumped into the air, before using the head of the giant zombie as a trampoline, in order to reach even more impressive heights, resorting to all of his strength and tightening up his grip over the unbreakable spear, before finally throwing it. Johansson was left amazed, as the protagonist had planned to use the giant in order to get altitude all along. As the spear approached its target, the great spectre couldn't believe its own non-existent eyes. The spear finally reached the moon, making the giant sphere crack, before ultimately breaking and letting the light of the moon loose. With the layers of the moon finally broken, the sphere could now shine at full potential, while the new users were still confused, so the old watchers explained the situation to them. Instant Beauty couldn't believe her eyes. The two Greek philosophers were astonished as well. Pieces of darkness began to crumble, as the horde of the undead was plunged into great pain, all due to the prowess of our hero, who safely landed on the ground. Go In-sung was pleased to see that even the great spectre couldn't resist the power of the moonlight. He then turned his gaze to his pet turtle and offered it the giant as a meal. The spirit turtle began its absorption, sucking up the giant entity, and with having perished, the turtle was now full as the dungeon had been conquered. After consuming so much energy, the little turtle could now get to advanced grade, as it would be reinforced by all soul essence and needed Wraith Soul Stone in order to evolve. This intrigued the protagonist, as the system informed him that Iron Will still had 5 seconds left. With that, the streamer was now certain of his own death. Even so, he couldn't deny how entertaining this whole adventure was, as the comments praised him for his hard work and welcomed him beside them in the afterlife. But just then, he recalled the concept of life energy. All the viewers were left shocked, as the hero suddenly remembered the presence of the heavenly bamboo fruit. Our hero began consuming it, as the time limit for Iron Will had reached its end. The protagonist felt an excruciating pain throughout his body, and the agony was so intense that he began to cough blood, before falling unconscious to the ground. All rushed to him upon seeing this horrifying scene. Yet after a quick examination, Socrates realized that the young man wasn't dead yet. Why his confused student who was away playing the bait asked for an explanation. Sometimes later, the streamer finally woke up, and was that confused as the comments called him out for his fortunate survival. With that, our hero then turned to his bad turtle and quickly realized that it had been patching up his injuries while he was unconscious. The fans were glad that they got to see more of their favorite streamer, as the manager explained to him how he had been out for an entire day. The old man then explained how surviving a fight with the great spectre was insane, as even when the game is set to the second weakest rank advanced, he was elite, just below leader. It was then stated to the protagonist how he had acquired the soul essence of the giant, which he recalled as a soul stone. The advanced soul stone of the great spectre possesses the spirit of the creature in question and allows a wielder with a soul extractor to learn some of its powers randomly. What seemed like a unique trait offered by the item looked more like a skill for our hero, who asked about the whereabouts of soul extractors. So the philosopher explained how Dungeon 1 to 6 should allow him to acquire one of those, leaving the viewers overexcited for the next journey of Please Save Me. Go In-sung assumed that the intel he required was classified just like everything else, yet Socrates explained that anything too obvious couldn't be considered a secret. The streamer also realized that he would need an evolution stone in order to refine his mythical turtle. He was also pretty surprised to see that his skill Iron Will, that he decided to not use as much as possible, had also leveled up as well. The performance of the protagonist was then praised by the iconic Greek philosopher. And when the old one brought up the fact that he had said the dungeon difficulty was too high, the heroine reminded him that everything would be over for him if he ever died. With that being said, our hero asked about the whereabouts of Johansson, before quickly assuming that she had led him to Dungeon 1 to 6. Yet to his surprise, Socrates explained that she was still at the exits. Instant Beauty, who refused to let someone unconscious on his own out of respect, decided to let our hero have the first place, as his help was crucial for conquering the dungeon. The protagonist was surprised by the very words of the girl that the philosopher recalls. Shortly after, the two streamers were reunited. with the current explaining how she had thought that the boy was done for, before mentioning that the mouth-to-mouth intervention had saved his life, leaving our hero overexcited at the thought of the beautiful girl's lips touching his. Yet to his horror, he had been saved by self-reflection as usual, making the comments burst out in laughter due to mockery. With that being said, she allowed our hero to exit the dungeon first and earn the #1 place. The hero still couldn't believe that she would let him go first, so today she urged him to go before she exited her decision. The protagonist then bid farewell to his manager, who warned his student about acting silly again. With that being said, the streamer bid each other farewell until next time, which entertained the comments seeing how chaotic their first meeting was. And with the fareway being done, the hero finally stepped into the exit of the dungeon. With that being said, he was now inside 1 to 6 as the system informed him that only 40 people could enter the next dungeon. But just then, Please Save Me received an unexpected notification that left him baffled, as he had earned the praise of the King of Hell to the comments' bafflement, seeing how this dungeon hadn't been cleared in advanced mode for more than 13 centuries. Socrates also had given him 100 balloons, which amazed the rest of the viewers. And due to our hero being the first out of 50 to clear Dungeon 1 to 5, he will now be getting a 50% discount coupon inside the shop. Please Save Me was now forced to pick between a blue door and a red door favored by the audience, and so he decided to listen to them, thinking that his choice wouldn't affect the results. Just like that, our hero was now in Redtown where he could resort to the shop. In-sung was somehow creeped out by the fact that everything around him was red, before placing his path into the inventory in order to let it rest, seeing how this dungeon was alien to them. Suddenly, an odd-looking man opened the door, and upon spotting our protagonist, he lashed out at him as the audience recognized him as the main character of this dungeon, the soft giant. The giant man quickly launched himself at our hero, who was left impressed by his colossal size, but was then left even more stunned by his incredible speed that he used to quickly close the distance. Our protagonist dodged the giant's punch at the last minute. As the hero tried to explain that he wasn't the person the man was looking for, he accused him of running away, which is why he charged him 10 more. The soft giant didn't want to hear any of it. I'd assume that the young man was trying to lure him into combat. In-sung assumed that he didn't have time to waste on a madman, which is why he began to run away, leaving him even more pissed off. The streamer decided to take a look at the shop, only to find nutrition tonics, sleeping pills, and a psychotherapy service, which were all items that our hero had no idea how to use. With that, he was grabbed by the shirt and lifted into the air by the soft giant, who then quickly slammed him into the ground. This little fall made our hero feel pain. But pain was quickly replaced with confusion as the giant man suddenly recalled how the protagonist owes him. The madman then attacked our hero with a bottle, explaining how he originally planned on having a knife, as he charged our hero even more, before delivering a powerful attack. The impact was so powerful that our hero, who was baffled by the fact that the bottle had survived his indestructible spear, was left trembling due to the shock. Now filled with great anger, the soft giant lashed out at our hero, who tried to defend himself in argument and in combat, only for his indestructible weapon to be knocked out of his hand by a simple bottle, leaving his hands to tremble, as he had been disarmed by the soft giant. The madman then used his trusty bottle to slam our hero on the head, leaving him in a tough spot, as he dragged him into his house by the skull, leaving the audience excited. Later on, we see the soft giant preparing a meal, while the spearman was rendered KO on the table, but just then he woke up greatly beaten up and confused about his whereabouts. The fans were greatly entertained upon seeing their streamer being startled by the soft giant, who then presented a meal to our hero. The overgrown cook then demanded that Please Save Me consumes 3 meals on a daily basis, which left him baffled seeing how they were total strangers. Even so, he couldn't get his eyes off the appetizing-looking rice. In-sung then theorized that he could cure the soft giant by using the psychotherapy present in the shop. With that being said, our protagonist was forced to consume the rice, and so he and the madman began to begin, only for the soft giant to realize that something was odd, as our hero had a fishy expression on his face. Suddenly, the overgrown cook fell into his own cooking. This was the fruit of the trickster protagonist's trickery, who had slipped sleeping pills into the food of the soft giant. The great spectre slayer began to wonder about the ridiculous reason that led him to lose against an overgrown cook, making him speculate that his defeat was almost intended. With that being said, he decided to escape this kitchen as a first step. Yet to his shock, doors and windows were both locked, and so he grabbed a chair and threw it at the window, only for it to bounce back on his head, making him the subject of the fandom's mockery once again. And so he decided to call Johansson first, only to discover that the communication had been cut off. This made the streamer assume that his ally had chosen the blue room. The protagonist then grabbed the bottle on the table in order to give the old man a taste of his own medicine. But as he swung the bottle with all of his might, he was shocked to see that it couldn't connect due to something called Clam Protection. Our hero had no idea about this trait, yet he still tried his best to hit the soft giant, only to fail miserably and make his audience laugh. In-sung assumed that his improvised weapon was enchanted, so he decided to smack the old unconscious man with a plate, only for the system window to suddenly pop up and inform him that the sad plate is, in fact, a soul extractor of normal grades. The evil protagonist quickly pulled out the soul's stone in the Great Spectre and placed it on the soul extractor in order to get it out from the precision. Just like that, the protagonist was now in possession of the Great Spectre's hunting instincts, an advanced trait that would allow our hero to detect life energy within a wide range, but she would appreciate according to this system, proclaiming that it will evolve once at max level. This trait was labeled useless by the streamer, who was disappointed by it. Go Insum noticed that the kitchen he was in wasn't out of the ordinary, and that it contained a mysterious door that was left unlocked. The room behind it left our hero amazed, as it turned out that the old man was in fact very wealthy, as he had numerous items. This little room turned out to be the real dungeon 1-6 that gives weapons to clan members, as it contained many useful items. The hero quickly realized that the present gear had truly great efficiency, but just then he was left amazed upon stumbling on an indestructible spear for the price of 3,000 balloons. And as he realized that there was glass preventing him from just taking the spear, the audience began to mock him and question if this item was truly his. But the streamer presented a scratch present on the spear as a mark of ownership. Then he realized that every item present in this room had been stolen by the soft giant. After thinking for a while, he grabbed the bottle from the table and muttered to himself how he wasn't doing anything wrong, as he was only taking back what was his. With that being said, the hero charged all of his might into the bottle in order to free his cherished weapon. Yet upon hitting the glass, the bottle bounced back to his face, making the viewers laugh at him. As he rolled on the ground in pain, the system then informed him that the discount he got in the last dungeon could be used to buy the spear half the price, leaving him utterly irritated. And so he decided to purchase the spear as quickly as possible in order to explore the rest of the room. But just then he was captivated by an item that cost a hopping 4,000 balloons, which left him baffled, as it was even pricier than his indestructible spear. Yet Please Save Me assumed that this item doesn't have any use, only for the audience to disagree. The dungeon escaper then explained that cheap and efficient items were also present, like the evolution stone that was worth 500 balloons. He was eager to place his hand on this item for the sake of his little pet. But just then, the haunting instinct of the Great Spectre had been activated, as life energy had penetrated its range. The hero turned around startled, only to be smacked by a bottle and knocked unconscious to the ground by none other than the soft giant. A little later, the overgrown cook ordered the young man to finish his meal or suffer another plate. But as Go Insung pointed out how they had fried rice yesterday, the giant cook affirmed that they would be eating it the next day as well, before affirming that the hero would only eat this very meal for the rest of his days. The young man asked if they could add some variation to their diet, yet the old man was left pissed off, as he expected thankfulness instead of insolence. And upon seeing how angry the giant old man was, the young man decided to peacefully enjoy his meal. Please save me, I had already spent 2 weeks with the soft giant. The young man asked if they could eat on separate plates, yet the fat one refused, feeling to be the victim of sleeping pills once again. It was now night time. The hero asked his kidnapper if he wished for him to do the dishes, only for him to claim that he was the one responsible for the kitchen, and asked our hero to clean up the floors. The protagonist immediately began to execute his task, and while doing so, he was notified that another user had entered dungeon 1-6, meaning that he had to escape as fast as possible, seeing how he now had 5 contestants. The overgrown cook was then left annoyed by the hero, who asked about dinner, and annoyance quickly turned into anger as the young man asked him once again. The audience was greatly amused as the hero left his kidnapper rather irritated, seeing how he was asking to know what was for dinner despite already knowing what it was. With that being said, the streamer decided to resume his reflection on the current events. By observing his kidnapper, our hero is now aware of the necessary method in order to open the door. He also began to think how the other village would have made more sense for a longevity symbol, and yet he was in the red village, and seeing how dungeons only had one theme, our protagonist assumed that the hint he was searching for must be simultaneously in both villages. And upon thinking of how mixing blue and red creates the color purple, the spearman came to a realization, as the most expensive item in the little room was an amethyst of color purple. Yet the hero decided to maintain his composure, as he needed to confirm something before buying the expensive item and finding out its use. That same day at the small house, fried rice was being cooked. The hero asked the chef, who didn't like to be called as such, if he had any knowledge about Clam Protection, startled to the point where he began burning the rice. The softer giant demanded to know where the young man had learned those words, suspecting him of seeing them for the first time when he gave him sleeping pills. This made the old mangrove furious upon seeing that the young one tried to kill him. But Please Save Me affirmed to him that he was still breathing. And when asked again about the Clam Protection, the old man explained how it was connected to an old myth in the Alliance of Villages. But when the hero demanded to know about the nature of this tale, the chef affirmed that he didn't believe in such stories. Shortly after, dinner was ready. Please Save Me asked about the flavor of the fried rice. Yes, the old man urged him to eat in silence, Yet as the protagonist suggested that the chef had the first bite, he insisted on going second, making our hero realize that he was fearing the presence of sleeping pills once again. But the streamer had no choice but to take the first bite. Upon seeing the overpowered chef, he reached for the bottle. Softer Giant assumed that everything was safe, seeing how the hero was calmly eating the rice. Yet after taking the first bite, his spoon fell on the ground, as he himself fell into the rice to the astonishment of the audience. Just then, our hero's complex emerged from the kitchen. Golden Sung praised the turtle for its good work, as he was the one who tasked it with placing sleeping pills into the rice, which intrigued the audience as he seemed unaffected despite having eaten. So the protagonist explained how he had used a nutrition tonic that was found in the shop in order to keep himself awake for 24 hours straight. As he entered the treasure chamber, the hero couldn't shake the feeling of sleepiness despite being full of energy. He also decided to purchase a particular item before going for very expensive purple ore. And with a few clicks of a button, our hero was now the proud owner of an advanced evolution stone that he judged twice to use later, as the time limit for the old man's slumber was unknown. But that being said, our hero went to buy the most expensive item, only to notice that his cherished expensive spear had disappeared, making him realize that the soft giant had placed his weapon away. But despite the anger, he decided to go for the amethyst first. Even so, the server had his doubts. Oh, this very expensive item might not be the key to his freedom. And if that's the case, he would have no viewers left, as he would also be doomed to consume fried rice for the rest of his days. As he was about to buy the item, our hero's hand began to tremble. Yet he decided to take a leap of faith as he spent all his money on one item. Just like the speed man who is now in possession of the amethyst, he would now try to figure out its mechanism. After thinking for a while, he began to search the entire room for any event that could help him escape. But as the search turned out to be a big failure, the hero decided to adopt a different approach and shake the item in his hand. But by doing so, something odd happened. As the crystal suddenly came out of the stone, the protagonist was beginning to lose hope, only to hear a sound coming from the sleeping cook, which made the fans assume that he had been awakened. But in reality, this was just the sound of his snoring. Upon seeing this, the streamer was left relieved. With that being said, he decided to check the shop, even though he was certain that there wasn't anything useful in it. Just then, he realized something odd. The first letters of the items present in the shop formed a word. This realization greatly pleased the audience, who was well aware that this was the first step towards the answer. Our hero then decided to look at the price of the items in order to obtain the second clue. With that being discovered, the young one realized that he must turn the crystal 4 times left and 6 times right. Yet to his horror, the soft giant suddenly woke up, startled. The overgrown cook was furious at the hero for taking the most precious item while he tried his best to solve the puzzle. Even the viewers lost faith upon seeing the giant man charge at the spearman, only for "please save me" to quickly evade as he turned the crystal 4 times right and 6 times left before dodging yet another punch. But the soft giant wasn't done just yet, as he delivered a powerful kick into the streamer's chest, sending the protagonist flying into the wall. But just then, our hero executed the last move, as he fell to the ground in front of the fried rice cooker. The giant was in fear, as the failure of the hero meant that he would spend eternity eating with him. At first, our hero seemed defeated, but as the exit appeared, he'd thanked the old man for all the fried rice, before finally escaping and leaving his kidnapper with a sad feeling of emptiness. But just then, the cook was informed of another adventure that entered Redtown, which left him overly excited. And just as the door opened, the soft giant charged at his next victim, who found himself overwhelmed by this odd situation. For being the first out of the 40 allowed in Dungeon 1 to 7, our hero received an F-rank skill book. Go Insum then began to analyze his surroundings, only to find out that he was now in a small gym room, and yet he was still intrigued by the presence of a mysterious door. Upon looking at the dungeon description, it was stated that a powerful monster resided behind the door, which you must beat in order to escape. This made the protagonist compare the situation to a boss fight and curse the never-ending dungeons. Our hero also realized that the equipment here was meant for him to work out in order to refine his body for the fight. Yes, he couldn't help but compare this to a prison cell that was filled with creatine and steroids. While that being said, he would hear the science to discover the new skill that he had obtained. The fan base had been weirded out by the strange expression filled with satisfaction that the hero had on his face upon unlocking the new skill. His new power was the normal grade weapon enhancement that allowed him to boost the stat of any weapon he held by 20 every 3 minutes, which left him pleased. With that being said, he reached out into his inventory and pulled out his little turtle. He wanted to make his pet evolve. With the creature going from normal rank to advanced rank, its owner had to pick an attribute for her between earth and water. The young man quickly realized that this was a crucial decision, and after thinking for some time, he decided to grant his pet the power of water. With that being said, the evolution stone had been activated. The little turtle began to evolve into an advanced creature with water powers. The hero wondered if his pet would stay small, as the system informed him that the evolution would be cancelled if it got exhausted. Just like that, the little turtle changed forms and acquired the power of Wave of Life that allowed it to wield water as an additional limb, as well as a divine summon that creates holy water. Go In-sung felt overjoyed to see his little creature gain in size, while the audience began to compare it to Squirtle from Pokemon, as they were both water turtles, and when asked about the reason behind this chosen evolution, the spearman explained that he assumed that water would be the best element for a turtle. With that being said, the little creature returned to the inventory. But just then, he received a sudden notification. It was a message from another streamer with a mention of something called One Hub next to the name of the sender. In this message, the girl presented herself as a member of the Blood Clan, the #1 guild approved by King Hades, who had been eyeing him from the start. The mention of the guild left our hero surprised as he continued reading that he could only read this message due to his past presence in the Red Village that is under their authority. Upon reading this, the hero finally realized why he had faced the clan's protection and the Red Village. Explained that every guild in the dungeon wanted to flee from it, which is why she wanted our hero to become one of them. It was then revealed to the protagonist that everyone who escaped 1 to 10 would be allowed to use the one hub where he could communicate with the Blood Clan. Go In-sung then asked the audience if the Blood Clan was truly this famous, but their overly excited reaction along with a generous donation made the answer pretty obvious. According to the fans, Johansson, who resides in the Blue Village, should be contacted by them as well. Even so, our hero decided to push this matter aside and focus on what's important, which is to access Dungeon 1 to 8. But just then, the life energy sensor that he got from the Great Spectre was triggered. Our hero felt overwhelmed as a monster resided in the other room. According to the system, it was a weak Manticor sleeping, and if our hero entered to face it, he could only exit its domain after 5 minutes. Even so, he decided to enter, and with that being said, he was teleported into the other room, which infuriated the audience, who realized that the door was only placed here for decoration. After arriving, our hero was left baffled, as he was in front of a giant creature with a lion face and wings that possessed a scorpion tail as well. And while the streamer was left baffled by how ironic the name of the powerful creature is, Socrates made a donation while pointing out how he froze in place. The desperate young man decided to take a look at the shop, only to find water, bread, a shovel, some feed, and protein powder. These items left our hero disappointed, while the audience mocked him for assuming that he would be able to purchase weapons in front of the giant creature. This made our hero wish that he still possessed the indestructible spear that he lost in the past dungeon, instead of these inferior weapons. With that being said, the spearman had no choice but to resort to a mediocre weapon, as he was fully aware that he must pay attention. So he began to walk around slowly on the tip of his toes, trying to examine his future adversity from all angles. But upon seeing its nose twitch, the young spearman's soul left his body, when suddenly the weak Manticor sneezed, leaving our hero disgusted as he was covered with mucus and saliva, and the audience greatly entertained. This creature seemed to be ill. With that being said, Go In-sung resorted to his strength and focus that mysteriously allowed him to shake off the mucus, leaving his fans intrigued. Our hero had also shaken off his doubts upon using the skill, allowing him to think rationally. Stuffy observed that there were some growing weeds inside this odd arena. Humidity could also be seen on the plants, and the cold temperature of the place could be felt by our hero's skin. Just then, a donation was made by someone asking the spearman to take on the Manticor, while 3 minutes had already passed. Yet as the hero affirmed that he would just wait for the 2 minutes left to patiently end in order to create a plot to defeat the creature, the one who made the donation was driven out of the channel by force due to forced labor. This confused our protagonist, so his audience explained how he would be forced into labor if he didn't obey the command of a donation. Just then, the one who invited him into the Blood Clan entered the comments and informed him that this matter was urgent, as the giant creature suddenly woke up, only to find a new prey in its cage. The caged Manticor resorted to its powerful claws, leaving our protagonist alerted, as he dodged a deadly hit the last minute. With that, our hero began to run for his life, while Lin donated 100 balloons and became a member of his fan club. The spearman then felt the creature behind him, and so he evaded its powerful attack once again, as the audience pointed out how he only had 1 minute left but weren't sure if he could survive this long. "Please save me." He kept running for his life. To him, this activity wasn't something very entertaining. All he had to do was find a weak spot and quickly turn around. With that being said, the spearman changed course in order to escape the monster with the lion face. Just like that, the side of the weak creature was now exposed, and so the spearman adjusted his position. Before using his weapon enhancement skill on his spear, the one who had been kissed by the philosopher was full of himself, seeing how he was the Moonbreaker. And with that being said, he poured his heart into one thrust, but was left completely baffled, as his attack had no effect on the steel body of the creature, which greatly entertained the viewers. Just like that, the predator began to give dark looks to his prey, before hitting him with his powerful claws, making the protagonist fall underground. The beast was merciless, and our hero had no other way to fight. Seeing how much he was bleeding, he realized that it was crucial for him to find a way to escape from the weak Manticor. But the time limit had reached its end and our hero was now free to exit the dungeon, which he immediately did. And with that being said, the young man escaped a crushing death. Back in the waiting room, the protagonist was left intrigued upon learning that with his leave, the powerful creature was healing its injuries. Expressions greatly entertained the viewers who realized the message he had just read. And while the spearman complained that it was unfair of the giant beast to heal itself, the comments began to mark him for being a whiny crybaby. Even so, the streamer had somewhat of an idea about the map of the dungeon as well as the escape door. Go Insum then pulled out his turtle as the audience pointed out that it was too young to work. Yet the hero decided to ask it to tend to his injuries, with the mythical creature channeling magic into its horns in order to heal its master. Just then, the Blood Clan member gifted our hero a total of 300 balloons, and while our hero was left amazed, Lynn explained that her generosity was the result of his kind heart, making him deeply thankful. And while the comments were blabbering about the generosity of the Blood Clan, the lady affirmed that they should try to boost the audience to 1,000, as all should be allowed to watch this broadcast. Go Insum, who was pleased by this situation, yet had always considered Socrates to be his greatest fan. The philosopher, sensing that someone was bad-mouthing him in secret, immediately made a donation, leaving the rest of the viewers amused. The member of the Blood Clan then asked him if he was truly a good fan despite being the manager. And so the Greek philosopher made another generous donation, explaining how he was the greatest fan before her arrival as Lynn asked him to be moderate due to the bad economy. Our hero could feel an argument rising, and so the rightful one made yet another generous donation, claiming that he wasn't afraid to pay for his favorite streamer as he marked himself as the #1 fan. The spearman was pleased to see that all of his stats had been enhanced by 1%. With that being said, the protagonist was left overjoyed. Shortly after, we see him working out, bench pressing a lot of heavy weights, and with chest training being over, now came the time for legs as the gym bro began to do some squats. After reaching his limits, our hero placed down the weights and was left pleased by the pump and the successful set. Go Insung then gulped some protein powder, and with that being done, he received a generous donation from the Blood Clan member praising him for his good work. Our hero expressed his thankfulness towards her while the viewers pointed out how he had been working out for a long time. The spearman then decided to return to the den of the Manticor. His strategy was simple. The first step was to acquire beautiful muscles. The second step would be to distract the giant creature with the feed present in the shop. And the third and last step would be to use this opportunity to run towards the door, which left him intrigued due to the presence of a useless shovel available to purchase. With that being said, the young man decided to execute his plan as soon as possible, and so he made his way into the arena. Yet after arriving and being placed once again face to face with the giant creature, our hero began to have his own doubts regarding his plan. Even so, he decided to not waver and see it through until the end. The Manticor quickly launched itself at him, and so the hero reached into his inventory as he got something very special for the creature in it. Just like that, advanced feed was thrown into the arena. The hero, in panic, felt relieved upon seeing the giant monster consume the advanced feed instead of him. As one user in the comments asked if the giant monster could be turned into a pet, Go Insung felt very thankful, as it was now his chance to dash with all of his might towards the escape door. But just as he took the first step, the beast with the lion face turned around, leaving him terrified as he suddenly froze in place. The hero realized that the Manticor has great senses as he prayed for it to peacefully continue its meal. Go Insung was relieved once again upon seeing the creature consume the advanced feed once again. He also realized that the monster must be eating slower due to all the cavities in its teeth, and so he tried to escape once again only to attract the attention of the monster. This made him immobile once again. Yet in the end, the streamer had enough as he rushed towards the exit. But the beast was also incredibly fast as it easily managed to slash through his back, making him fall through the exit door. Go Insung claimed that he would have been among the dead if he had tarried a little longer, making the deceased remind him that he was already in their domain. But just then, our hero noted something odd, as there was no exit door, making the fan base assume that he did a wrong deduction. But just then, the protagonist was spotted by the giant creature. Yet our hero felt relieved as the Manticor was too big to enter this room. And so, assuming that he was out of danger, he pulled out his pet turtle in order to make it patch up his wounds, which everyone found to be a bad idea. Yet the giant beast wasn't done yet, as it exerted its breath of fire into the room, startling the human and the turtle. And just as the hero began to complain about how unfair this ability was, he suddenly realized that his hair was on fire. And while some of the comments were concerned for him, others found his misery very entertaining. Upon seeing that the Manticor was allowed to unleash another fire breath, the spearman was left terrified for his life. And so he threw more advanced feed in order to distract it. The intrigued monster quickly abandoned its prey in order to enjoy the delicacy. Our hero, a burning head, urged his pet to quickly evolve. The system began to bombard him with information about the evolution. Yes, our hero, in agony, didn't care as he urged the process to get faster. The turtle had now evolved as its master urged it to extinguish the fire on his head. And so, with a quick water spell, the fire had finally been put down, Later on, inside the arena, our terrified Humpty Dumpty began to shiver as he was staying close to the wall. He tried his best to not make a sound in order to avoid the wrath of the great beast. And every time he was discovered, he offered it more advanced feed in order to save his life. Shortly after, inside the waiting room, our bald hero began to cry in front of his new haircut as his dear fan base began to mock him once again. But just then, the philosopher made a small donation, claiming that there was a way to restore his hair. Go In-sung was left full of hope to see the solution, but was quickly frustrated as the old man was making fun of him, claiming that the solution was to get back to Dungeon 1 or 2 to acquire the elixir he used to grow bamboo. Our hero had lost all hope, but upon touching his head, he felt great pain as he had forgotten how it was burned. His little turtle began to lick it in order to heal the burn. Go In-sung, who had enough of these dungeons, it didn't feel like his adversary had gained in power, as stated by the system. That the arena seemed to be less humid, as the weeds and network were deprived of life, making him assume that the Manticor had changed without him noticing. The spearman found this dungeon to be very challenging and had no hints on how to escape it. But just then, a member of the Blood Clan reminded him that he was also in possession of the amethyst. This confused our hero, so the lady explained how this item contained Clam Protection, and that he should use his focusing skill on it. This left the protagonist glad upon hearing this explanation, and so he resorted to his strength and focus, channeling the expensive item as it allowed him to clear his mind and restore himself. With that being said, our hero quickly returned inside the monster's den as his intrigued audience related his courage to the calmness provided by the amethyst. Just like that, the bald man was now certain of his victory, and so he reached out into his inventory in order to distract it with advanced feed. But to his shock, he had already run out. With that, he was left with no way to distract the weak Manticor. The egg had tried to purchase more, only to be reminded by the system that a shop wasn't available in the arena. With that being said, Prey was now left completely defenseless in front of its powerful predator. In-sung was left to panic as he could only run for his life from the weak Manticor. The hero then dodged a powerful attack that missed him by a hair before readjusting his position and becoming completely startled as the giant beast unleashed its fire breath once again, forcing the bald protagonist to duck in order to avoid his skull being turned into a boiled egg. Go In-sung, who was only here for the sake of gathering intel, began to wonder if he could truly remain unharmed for the entire recall time reset, when suddenly he noticed that the trait he got from the Great Spectre went off, which left him intrigued, seeing how it could only be triggered when a vessel of life energy is within its range. But just then, the bald one was reminded that he was on a battlefield, and so he began to run as fast as possible, once again fearing for dear life. Upon reaching the wall, the spearman used it in order to change trajectories and launch himself at a groundbreaking speed that left the audience amazed. Even so, the Manticor was still on his tail as it had decided to use its own in order to put the hero out of his misery. But just as the deadly sting was unleashed, the 5 minutes were over, and so our hero immediately retreated, allowing him to escape a venomous fate and return to the safety of the gym. The bald one was still amazed by the fact that he had survived. Our hero also found a hint, yet he decided to resort to the purple crystal first to tend to his injuries, before having a quick meal and some sleep in order to replenish his energy, while the audience realized that this must be the same routine he used to survive his studies. After some time and a long nap, Go In-sung purchased some feed and began to think of how the hunting instance of the Great Spectre had picked up the presence of life force, meaning that another living being resided in the arena with a monster, which is why the hero purchased a shovel in order to find the mysterious +1. Once inside, shortly after, when attacked by the beast, the protagonist remained unfazed as he threw it some feed in order to distract it. With that, the egg tried to recall the exact spot his trait was triggered, and after a few steps, it went off once again. With that, he began digging, thinking that the reason behind the shovel's presence was to discover the hidden life energy underground. But just then, the digger realized that the land was now even more deprived of life than it was before. He also noticed that the fearsome beast had finished its meal, and so he threw it more feed, in order to get it out of his way while the audience laughed at the giant monster for still being a cat at heart. With that, the young man kept on digging, even as the comments were getting filled with their usual silliness. Our hero kept on using the shovel, working as hard as possible, and after the hard labor came the time for a protein shake. 3 days had passed since the protagonist grabbed the shovel, and the monster didn't seem to be bothered by his actions as it was all happening underground. The tired Go In-sung had underestimated the wide range of his trait, but after some more digging, his shovel had finally hit something. The other life force vessel had been reached. The hero rushed to uncover the item, and upon seeing it, the egghead was left stunned, as this was the rare immortality herb that sucks up all life energy in its range while aging its targets, with the process getting slower as the target is placed further. This description left our hero amazed, but he then quickly noticed that the hand that was holding the herb quickly began to morph, and so he threw the rare item away. Go In-sung was shocked to see his hand age so quickly, and so he resorted to his purple crystal in order to rejuvenate his limb. Only then was he notified that another user named Hubbard had entered this level. This surprised him, as this name had never occurred among the first and the last dungeon and had advanced Johansson. while the audience, who were excited by his arrival, compared him to Agro and stated that he would make a great commissioner. Our hero decided to welcome Hubbard out of politeness. Meanwhile, inside the waiting room, the said general realized that he needed to gain physical strength in order to access the next level. But just then, he received a notification from the hero greeting him, leaving the general more than pleased for having been contacted by the top scorer of the last few dungeons. Our hero was then left intrigued as the general praised him for passing. The comments were then greatly entertained as Hubbard decided to take the protagonist as his disciple. Power-intrigued Bald Head decided to cut off this meaningless conversation, while the general pointed out how newcomers aren't very social. And with that being said, he decided to stop joking around. Back to the underground cave. The member of the Blood Clan congratulated our hero for finding the immortality herb, seeing how challenging it was to locate. Eating this made the streamer wonder if this item was truly this precious. But the viewers affirmed that this was a very distinguished item with many uses that could fetch a high price. With that, the Bald Head realized that this dungeon was made around the herb of immortality, meaning that it must be a key item for his escape. And so he pulled out his purple crystal and placed it in his pocket in order to keep it in contact with his body. Only now came the difficult part, as he reached for the immortal herb that makes everything age, and took it off the ground to the astonishment of the comments. Suddenly, the streamer opened the container, and upon grabbing it with his bare hand, was left baffled by its immense power. He also felt thankful towards the amethyst as it allowed his body to stay youthful in the majority of his parts. The protagonist then reached for his shirt and ripped off a part of it. Shortly after, back at the entrance of the tunnel, the young turtle popped up first, and with no danger in sight, its wild master popped up as well. Go In-sung was intrigued that the giant beast was nowhere to be found, only for the hunting instinct of the grand spectre to be triggered, making the young man realize that something was coming from behind. The fierce and weak Manticor was trying to take our hero from behind, yet the Bald Head was quick to react, and startled the lion-faced creature upon using his modified spear. The monster immediately jumped back. Our hero realized that this powerful herb he attached to the tip of his spear also struck fear into the Manticore's heart, before stating that life was fading away from this arena as time goes by, and that the monster was only growing stronger after each fight due to him reaching the energy stolen by the herb that resided inside the ground. The great beast tried to use its fire breath, yet our hero remained unfazed as he asked his turtle to use its water. Just like that, the beam unleashed a powerful water splash that clashed with the fire breath. This entertained the audience, who couldn't help but compare the scenery to a Pokemon battle. And with the monster's fire being put out, the comments affirmed that this was the best opportunity to take it down. The Manticor launched itself at the hero, who resorted to his strength and focus skill. Go In-sung was now fully aware that the monster was eating slowly due to its burned-up throat rather than its bad dentition. With that being said, the spirit had been refined with weapon enhancement, as the egghead threw it towards the monster. In order to deliver the final blow, the weapon immediately pierced its mouth, making the monster decay in front of the eyes of the baffled protagonist. With that, the Manticore's flesh was gone. It was now rendered as a lifeless skeleton. With that being said, our hero grabbed his spear and pulled that out from the mouth of his latest victim. A blue energy resided inside the mouth of the skeleton. Just like that, Please Save Me overall stats had been increased upon him, absorbing the essence of the monster's spirit. The process being done, our hero was left overjoyed. He then noticed that a part of the monster was right next to his feet, and so he quickly picked it up, as it turned out to be the toe bone of the weak Manticore, which was an advanced item known for being light but sturdy. The bald one was also very happy to see that his weapon enhancement as well as his strength and focus had both leveled up. With that being said, the gates leading to the next dungeon had been opened. The pleased protagonist began to walk forward in order to conquer yet another dungeon. Just like that, our hero would receive a Frank skill book for being the first out of 30 to enter dungeon 1 to 8. Humpty Dumpty began to brag that his genius was the reason behind him always getting first place while playing with his non-existent hair. Just then, he noticed something odd before falling on his back and seeing something intriguing. Go In-sung found himself in the company of deer. The goal of this level was to keep at least 6 deer alive for 6 days until the exit appears. This room was almost twice as big as the waiting room of the previous dungeon. How quickly realized that this dungeon was made around the theme of the deer that was also one of the 10 symbols as well. The egg got also very well that the hexagon in front of him would become an exit after 6 days. Only one matter remained, which was the reason behind robbing his horns on our protagonist. Yet just as he tried to pat it, Humpty Dumpty had his own eggs pulverized by the horned creature. This made him fall on the ground in agony as he began to swear from the bottom of his heart. He was particularly irritated by this dungeon that tried to take every part of his body. The spearman tried to negotiate with the animals, only for them to suddenly run away. And while he was confused about the sudden behavior, the audience clarified that this was due to his horrible smell and that he needed to shower. Go In-sung felt harassed upon hearing this request, yet the audience straightly told him to pause the stream before doing it. And as they noticed that he was unaware of this feature, they realized that he still hadn't bathed since the beginning and that the taste of instant beauty was doubtful. With the stream being held off, the little turtle used its water power in order to shower its master. Go In-sung felt really glad to have chosen the earth attribute, as this shower was very pleasing. And just as this stream was resumed, the audience quickly commented on the hero who acquired new clothes and a shiny bald head. He then tried to approach the creatures, and seeing how his scent was okay, the deers finally accepted to come closer. And while our hero began to pat them, the audience felt grateful towards their hostile behaviors as it resulted in the young man taking a shower. The protagonist couldn't help but realize how pathetic the animals looked, when suddenly his nostrils were invaded by a sudden scent that appeared only now, seeing how his natural musk had been masking it ever since he entered the dungeon. The protagonist then noticed that something odd was on the deer, which turned out to be a swelling, many of them possessed as well, meaning that this was the disease mentioned in the intro of the dungeon, making him realize that he must nourish them back to health. The comments began to talk about how previously the survival duration was only 4 days instead of 6, and that it was hard enough as it was before. And as they continued to wonder about the reason behind this elongation, the hero summarized that the dungeon had gotten more challenging as 2 more survival days had been added, and so he decided to check the shop only to find a cure inside it. After thinking for a while, the bald head purchased a bottle of the cure, before emptying it on the sculling of a certain deer, making it disappear. This left the hero pleased, yet he was then quickly left disappointed, as since it takes an entire bottle to cure a single swelling, it would take him his entire balloons in order to cure the rest of them. And so as he judged that the cure wasn't worth buying, the comments began to call him out for his cruelty towards the animals. Go In-sung decided to expand his audience in order to have better ratings. And so he reached into the TV store where he could buy and recommend tickets for 100 balloons each in order to double his recommendation for 10 minutes. The spearman was 53 recommendations short from expanding his audience. With that being said, he purchased the tickets to double his recommendation for 10 minutes, as higher ratings mean more viewers. And so the bald head began to beg for recommendations, yet the audience only agreed to do so if they were entertained. Please save and decided to tell them a story from his time back on Earth when he was once visited by a female junior. With that, he began to play the 2 roles, one being his junior who went on a date and him asking her about it. The girl explained how he was a student of medicine who arrived in a fancy car. It was done, the girl and the student got intimate right after the date. This greatly entertained the audience. And as the #1 fan made a donation asking for a nose surgery, the rest of the viewers began to talk about how he had overcome his earthly desires. With that, recommendations began to rain upon our hero, allowing him to reach the required number and evolve his BJ grade to Advanced 2. This greatly pleased the protagonist, as it meant that he could expand his audience. 25 more people would now be allowed to spectate our hero's shenanigans. And just like that, the bald head was left overjoyed. He was particularly excited upon seeing more users watching his stream, and so he quickly introduced himself by using his username, which the newcomers recognized as the top 1 dungeon escaper from 1.3 to 1.7, before commenting on his ugly bald head. The spearman explained his task to the newcomers, stating that he must keep 6 deers alive for 6 days. He then claimed that he would amaze them upon coming up with a strategy, and so he reached into his inventory and pulled the immortality herb and the amethyst, which left the newcomers baffled as the rare items were in his possession. With that being said, the young man approached the animal and placed the crystal on its head, and the herb on the swelling, leaving the viewers confused. But just then, the immortality began to work its magic. And just like that, the little deer had been nursed back to health, which the viewers didn't quite understand. Go In-sung explained that these were his abilities to an amazed audience. Yet they were still confused, as it could still meet its end by old age, as the protagonist affirmed that 1 to 8 was an easy dungeon. Shortly later, the sun of the 2nd day dawned on the deers. Our hero woke up happily after spending the night between the animals. Go In-sung had a great rest of sleep, and so he decided to make a roll call. Yet upon counting, he noticed that there were only 13 deers, and to our hero's shock, 2 of the animals were lying lifeless on the ground. Upon meeting their demise, the protagonist was disappointed to see them bite the curb so soon, so he judged it wise to immediately cure them all. Please saving the site to use the cure on those who had a less harsh condition, and use the combination of powerful items to purify the others. That came day 3. Our hero screamed that he was going to start his roll call, which weirded out some of the viewers, while others realized that he was doing this out of boredom, and to his surprise, he had lost yet another animal. This left him particularly intrigued, as this one seemed to be in perfect health. Go In-sung, who had doubts, decided to check on another deceased animal, only to find out that this one was also deprived of swellings. This made the egg theorize that some opponent eliminated the animals while he was sleeping. With the coming of day 4, the protagonist had a hard time keeping his eyes open. One of the deer began to stretch, but the one wielding the spear quickly halted it, claiming that he must keep the little creatures where he could see them, while the audience commented on his pathetic sleep deprivation. Day 5 had arrived, and Please Save Me wasn't any better. From looking at the deer, he realized that they required food, and so he quickly fed them. The streamer was happy to see that he was about to reach the 6th day without having lost any more of these creatures. But our hero was so sleepy, that he ended up passing out standing with his eyes open as the viewers made fun of him. But just then, he was suddenly awoken by a notification alerting him that the general had escaped Dungeon 1 to 7. With that, Hubbard was now in a room full of deer. The hero then addressed him, claiming that he was fast while escaping the grasp of the Manticor, which pleased the teacher, who praised his children for already passing, leaving him rather irritated. Go In-sung grew curious about the method that the man had used in order to escape so quickly without sensing life energy, as well as the performance of the other contestants. So when asked about the method he had used in order to escape, the general replied by claiming that he had taken a look at the textbook, leaving the hero furious. But just then, a sudden sound attracted his attention, as another one of his beasts fell lifeless to the ground. Please Save Me was stunned by this sudden death. But just then, he looked at the animal next to the corpse and realized that it made a strange sound. The animal in question then passed by another deer, making it cough blood, and fell to the ground. This scene left our hero in shock, who decided to take a closer look at the culprits. To his surprise, the creature was in fact a goat and not a deer, whose presence there had no explanation. The protagonist grew frustrated for not realizing there was an imposter among his creatures. He also concluded that the goat could not remain there, and so the animal was defeated and ended up falling onto the hexagon. Go In-sung felt a weight of guilt for his decision, but then one of the comments pointed out that it would be better to move the creature away from the exit, since it had fallen exactly over the hexagon. The bald one rushed to move the body elsewhere, but soon he was surprised. For some reason, that goat would not move at all. This greatly irritated our hero. Part of the audience could not understand what was happening. Someone realized that this goat was a major problem. When asked about it, it was revealed that the goat was a dark omen and that, according to Stex TV, something dangerous was about to happen. Still, our hero could not understand and demanded a clearer explanation, but others in the comments reassured the protagonist, saying that he should not worry, since he was obviously in first place, which left him relieved. Then he noticed something strange. The goat had 6 markings on its body, while normal ones only had 4. With that, the final day finally arrived. The young man was glad to see he had saved a total of 7 deer, so he demanded that the exit be opened, when suddenly the ground began to crack, and a strange black energy began to seep out of the goat's body, making our hero scream in panic, for the hexagon had been activated. The bald one had trouble understanding. Even the animals were frightened. But then Dungeon Chaser 3, who was an operator, appeared on the channel, leaving the viewers impressed as it began to speak with the protagonist. The streamer realized it was not unusual for a channel to have an operator, and so he asked the entity if he had done the right thing by eliminating the goat. The operator then informed him that there was a problem, leaving him intrigued. The operator asked the heroes to be patient while he analyzed the situation, which left everyone uneasy. Someone in the comments mentioned that they had never seen anything like this, and the hero replied anxiously. But then the operator revealed that this goat only existed in the very room he was in, leaving him horrified, as it meant that the other contestants were not facing the same problem. Then something strange happened again. The chat window suddenly vanished. Dark smoke emerged from the hexagon, leaving the deer terrified. The fallen goat began to emit strange sounds as monstrous forms started to reform, terrifying the young one, and thus a creature with the body of a man and the face of a goat speaking an unknown language appeared. Our hero demanded an explanation, but he could not understand the words spoken by the creature. The trembling streamer could not move his legs, when suddenly the entity began to act, and then disappeared, making the young man assume that it had been absorbed by the hexagon. With that, everything returned to normal, and the exit of 1 to 8 was once again available. Go In-sung fell to his knees, relieved that it was all over, as the animals approached him. Meanwhile, with Alice's help, a servant apologized to his master as the ceremony had ended. But the master stated that it was of no importance and that they should focus on finding the one responsible. The king of the underworld, enraged by the return of Bahamut, ordered his servant Gangnam to capture and bring the creature back, believing it was still weakened from just having resurfaced. Gangnam rushed to carry out his master's orders. The king realized this matter could become problematic, when suddenly he was contacted by another elder, whom he greeted casually. The old man explained that he knew about the creature's return and, when asked about his source, revealed there were rumors about a 6-mark goat in Dungeon 1 to 8. The ruler replied that he had no idea who the culprit was. But since the elder reminded him that his channel was the one responsible for that area, he realized there was a possibility of a traitor involved. The elder in the mirror, however, stated that this was not the case since few were aware of the ancient resurrection tools, claiming that Stex TV, Heavenly Kingdoms, Heavenly Gate TV, Sansa River, and Jordan TV should meet at once, as they had all controlled the first zone at some point. The Hell King assumed that it wasn't much of a problem as Bahamut was taken care of 666 years ago. Yet one of the old men explained that the most also judged the one who executed the ritual. The King of Hell affirmed that the protagonist was also fooled by someone else. Even so, the old man claimed that it was shameful and that they should just throw him into the underworld. But the King of Hell affirmed that his #1 channel should be more than enough to keep the young man in control. Just like that, the one in the mirror cut off all communications. Meanwhile, our hero was the first of 20 to set foot in Dungeon 1-9, meaning that he would be getting an F-rank skill book. The operator then informed our hero that the bug in the system had been fixed and that he could once again do streams as the audience began to comment on the issue. Meanwhile, our hero was examining the room, as the viewers began to talk about how it must be the work of Bahamut, which is intriguing as he had been put down a long time ago. But the protagonist affirmed that he wouldn't try to mind it and only escape the dungeon just as he knew to, before deciding to go down the normal-looking well. The dungeon itself was almost as high as one too, and upon spotting a trap on the wall, he realized that this must be the exit. With that being said, the bald one prepared himself, as he resorted to his physical enhancement before charging and using the power of his muscles in order to climb as high as possible. And after reaching his maximum, he had no choice but to return to the ground. This little maneuver allowed him to memorize the structure of the dungeon. Please save me, then decided to take a look at his new skill, which turned out to be muscle enhancement, allowing him to increase his strength by 20%. With that being settled, he decided to take a look at the shop to find any water bread and an exit detector. Our protagonist realized that this mission would end quickly if he purchased the detector. And just like that, he was now in possession of a giant loop that shows arrows of light that point to the exit of the dungeon. The egg had spent some time searching only to find nothing, and so he took off his clothes before throwing himself into the well in order to search there. Please save me, reached the water, and dived deep into it. Yet to his surprise, this liquid was so heavy that it felt like he was being attracted down. And seeing how he was unable to swim, he urged himself to escape the well as it was clearly a mortal danger. Our hero spotted something intriguing, as a bank of piranhas charged at him all at once. With the fish beginning to attack him, our hero was now more determined than ever to get out of the waters, while the audience began to laugh once again at his misery. And just as a fish bit him in the throat, he assumed that everything was over, only for his little pet to come to his rescue by guiding him towards the surface, which left the viewers amazed by the talent of the little turtle. Finally, having reached the surface, the injured hero quickly returned to safety. Our hero expressed his gratitude towards his pet, yet the comments wanted him to be more sincere. As he was being healed, he felt as if the water he was in was like a living being. This made the bald man assume that the water was similar to the undead of 15, as it reacted to life energy. And so he quickly decided to put his theory to the test by giving himself more life energy by consuming the rest of the heavenly bamboo fruit. With that being said, the protagonist decided to take a peek into the well, only to find the water acting strangely. And as it emerged, it turned out that our hero's theory was right. Yet he was left startled upon seeing the water fill the room. And while In-sung realized that he didn't think this through, Instant Beauty made her way into the dungeon. The submerged protagonist had no choice but to resort to his turtle, as Hansen pointed out how he was the first to enter a dungeon once again. Instant Beauty also grew intrigued by the lack of reply from the one who was fighting for his life. Just then, the bald protagonist reached the surface and grabbed the handle that was on the wall, leaving him overjoyed, as the lady claimed that she had assumed they were friends, seeing the hardships they endured together in one fight. Yet our hero didn't have time to reply. Just then, the bald head realized that there was a second handle, so he quickly grabbed it in order to stabilize himself before trying to open the door. Yet to his astonishment, the small door on the roof seemed blocked. This reminded him of something he saw on TV regarding submerged cars and that their doors won't open due to water pressure. Thus, to escape, one had to fill it with water. And so, upon comparing this real-life case to this undead one, our protagonist used his evolution stone to grant his turtle the author attribute once again, before commanding it to fill the room with water using its abilities. Once fully submerged, the protagonist tried to open the door once again. And with this attempt being a success, the audience was left amazed by his knowledge of water pressure. Just like that, the bald man quickly made his way into the other room, before using the detector in order to find the direction towards the exit. And so, as our hero began to swim towards the surface, someone in the comments claimed that he would have faith in him from now on, only for the others to claim that he always doubts. Just like that, our hero stepped into the entrance of the last dungeon. And with him being in first place once again for 7 consecutive times, the system decided to grant him any Frank skill book of his choice, leaving the fans amazed. Meanwhile, In-sung couldn't believe his own eyes, as the last dungeon was an almost exact copy of 1 to 5. The only difference being that there was no moon and no other symbols in sight. This place was described as a maze of concealed treasures and monsters where the eternally shining sun restores vitality and where all contestants could enter at once. This made him unsure whether the other contestants would turn out to be friend or foe. Our hero was intrigued by a notification alarming him that the viewers could now vote. The spectators of the channel were allowed 1 vote per day, with each increasing vote boosting stats by 100, and the maximum being 10,000 votes. Please Save Me, who felt that something bad was coming, decided to escape this dungeon as fast as possible. He then decided to enjoy his reward, which was a choosable skill. And so upon opening the shop, he was left amazed upon seeing that an advanced skill resided between the others, once greatly entertaining the audience who didn't want to spoil him. This skill was a well of sacrifice, but allowed our hero to shield every living being with a barrier for 5 seconds, which would cause his demise. Seeing how this ability could kill him, our hero was left devastated, and so he opted for forward dash that would grant him great moving speed every 30 seconds. The bald egg decided to put his new skill to the test as he dashed forward, leaving him impressed by his new incredible speed. Upon checking the shop, the protagonist realized that he could only buy a treasure chest or a map of the dungeon, so he decided to go for the map. And to his surprise, it wasn't something very complex. With treasure and monsters being marked on the map, the plan was simply to locate the chests and open them in order to get the necessary item to escape the dungeon. Go In-sung quickly triangulated his own location and was certain that he would surely find his way. So he decided to head towards the nearest location, which was the mark of the elephant that he had no problem finding. With that being said, the spearman entered and descended the staircase before being surprised by the high temperature inside. Inside this dark room, a chest resided that our hero felt relieved upon discovering. Please Save Me then pointed out that there was no difficulty in getting this treasure, allowing him to jinx himself as a monster appeared right in front of him to the audience's entertainment. The viewers then asked the bald man to fight the monster elephant with 3 noses, a request that left our hero stunned. The beast charged at the young man, and just as it was about to strike him down, he evaded at the last minute. The young man then readjusted his position and aimed his spear while using his new skill, before launching himself towards the back of the elephant as the fans asked him to give it a kind death. Just like that, the giant monster was stabbed in the throat, and as its blood covered the young man's hand, it then fell dead on the ground, which impressed those of the other world, earning him a total of 2 new votes. And just as Please Save Me began to complain about the power of this creature, he suddenly noticed that it had hair. The system notified the spearman of the new ranking, before rewarding him with infinite inventory space for being number 1, leaving him overjoyed. The chest in front of our hero contained the item that he needed in order to finally flee from it, so he quickly inserted the key and was pleased to find an exit detector. Go In-sung assumed that he would be the first to escape once again if he was in possession of this item, when suddenly his life energy sensor went off, leaving him startled. The system informed him that the wife of the elephant he just murdered was now coming to avenge her husband with her 5 noses, amazing the audience. Please Save Me resorted to his strength and focus skill as well as his weapon enhancement, before activating his 2 remaining powers, only to realize that he was already in possession of the treasure, meaning that there was no need to slay the elephant, just flee from its domain. And upon trying to open the door, he was shocked to find out that it was locked. And as the wife of the elephant charged ahead, our hero screamed in order, only to realize that it was unable to go up the stairs. Go In-sung was left in a tough situation as the system informed him that he could only exit this room by slaying a grieving widow. With that, he reminded himself of the time he had slain the great spectre, which was the only memorable achievement according to his fans. The protagonist charged at the creature, determined to slay it with 1 attack, so he escaped her powerful noses, before making his way underneath her by resorting to his forward dash, and using his spear in order to deliver the final attack. Hero tried to take the monster from the ground up, but was quickly left amazed, upon seeing that the giant creature dodged this spear, him questioning the reason behind its incredible speed, while the audience debated whether it was a mammoth or an elephant. Just then, the creature launched a surprise attack that successfully slammed our hero into the ground with brutal force. The protagonist had taken great damage, to the point where he had almost lost his breath. The elephant wife was much bigger and stronger than her deceased elephant husband. Grief filmed her eyes as she charged at the bald one once again. Please Save Him right to run for his life, but the monster was quick, as he unleashed his powerful noses that our hero managed to dodge at the last second. With that being said, the young man safely regained the stairs, relieved to not have met his end yet at the nose of the elephant. Go In-sung began to think for a while, before striking the ceiling, yet to no effect. Somebody, and as he was left disappointed, the audience pointed out how annoying the dungeons are. The young man knew very well that the only way for him to reach the exit was to slay the creature. But just then he was notified that the general had entered the last dungeon. Hubbard felt relaxed by the sun to the point where he wanted to teach poetry today. After some time, he entered the spot marked with a boar. The general felt pleased by the green herbs and the cute rabbits. Streamer also noticed something approaching, which turned out to be a war charging at him. Upon seeing this and realizing that it had horns, the general decided to call it Uniron as he reached into his inventory in order to pull out Veritas' shield. With that being said, Hubbard thanked the charge of the beast, which only made him back up a little. The man then made a smile before affirming that the monster was too weak to eliminate him. Just then, another war came charging at him, yet the general easily blocked it using his loyal shield. The confrontation pleased the man, as he charged at the boars. And as he knocked the monster down, the system informed him that the contestant known as Leo was the third to join the dungeon. The monsters were knocked to the ground, and as they struggled to get up, the general finished them off using his shields. Just then, he realized that another creature was trying to take him from the back. He quickly blocked it using his shield, before hitting it with the Judgment of Truth in order to abridge its misery. Only then did another monster charge at the man from behind. Hubbard, who noticed it too late, realized focus. But just then his attacker was shot by an arrow. A mysterious archer had appeared, and then she began to brag about her skills being the best. The general recognized her as Leo. The girl also knew that the man in front of her was Hubbard. Later on, a square on the ground began to move, only for it to be an opening trap that revealed a treasure chest that left the both of them amazed. Back to the wielder of his kids that managed to erupt blood. The egghead, who was constantly stabbing, assumed that the back was the weak point of the monster. Didn't seem to be harmed due to its thick skin. Being said, the protagonist decided to go for the eyes, which were definitely a weak spot, and so he apologized to the widow as he was about to end her misery. Yet the beast quickly resorted to her nose in order to flunk the egg off her back. This made the fans remind him that the creature had many powerful noses, as he grunted in pain. Meanwhile, outside the monster's den, Hubbard found himself arguing with Leo over the ownership of the treasure that turned out to be an exit detector. In the end, the general won the debate and began to wonder about the way of using it, only for the girl to snatch the treasure and run away, making the man remind her that theft is illegal. But upon realizing that she was nowhere to be seen, the teacher decided to give the archer a lesson regarding ethics later on. Back to the domain of the monster, where our hero was fighting for his life. Go In-sung tried his best to avoid the consecutive attacks, and just as he had spotted what seemed to be a weak point, he was noticed by the elephant and flunked away once again, making the viewers call him out for his many defeats. Please Save Me knew very well that he couldn't sneak up on the monster, and that he couldn't keep on enhancing his speed by using skills. Even so, the bald egg acquired a good idea of this one's attack routine and realized that its lower part must be weak, seeing how fast it dodges any attack towards it. With that, the egg-like hero was determined to achieve victory, and so he charged at the giant creature after enhancing his concentration. He avoided nose number 5, followed by the first. Nose 2 and 4, which were launched at the same time, were dodged as well. The spearman then did the same with the straight strike of the third and last one. And when it came the time for the mammoth to unleash all of its noises at once, the chance of our hero finally came. The protagonist positioned himself using a forward dash, as he enhanced both his steel and flesh, in order to deliver a frightening final blow. Just like that, the spear pierced the stomach of the monster, making it shout one final scream before falling dead on the ground, allowing the young one a total of 2,000 votes for slaying on his own, as well as the essence of its soul that enhanced his stats. This pleased the audience, as he had tried and failed a total of 51 times. Yet the protagonist found himself stuck under the animal, who began to leak his excrements from its stabbed insides. Please Save Me tried to free himself, and even boosted his strength using a skill, only to be met by failure and great pain, as his hip had been dislocated by the efforts. The streamer finally gave up, saddened as he assumed that he was going to meet his end inside a pool of excrement, when suddenly his attention was picked up by the light coming from the opening door. Our hero was shocked to see a Hubbard who was disappointed that someone had already completed the task before him. The one stuck under the beast quickly introduced himself. The man then claimed that he would award the hero additional points for being a brilliant student who arrived to the class before the teacher, reminding the bald one of this odd behavior. He then recalled a quote from the library of Hubbard claiming that one should take pleasure in the inevitable, as the angry Baldy urged him for help. And as the general pointed out how he was stuck in excrement, the young one begged once again for his release. Hubbard claimed that he would listen to the stuck one's story after helping him, yet the young one was unsure if he could do it. And so the audience was left amazed, as the general firmly claimed that everything was possible for the daring ones who experience and try, which weirded out the hero. With that, Hubbard placed his hands under the mammoth and lifted with all the might he had in his back. This made Please Save Me realize the immense strength that this man had. Just like that, the bald one was rescued from under the animal. The hero then expressed his gratitude towards his savior, who affirmed that he didn't need his thanks, as he was now in possession of the tail of the monster, which could be sold in order to fund his school, making the audience realize how weird he was as they urged the hero to take the tail. But just then, Go In-sung was left intrigued, as he began to read what was on the man's hat. The general couldn't understand what he wanted to insinuate, so Baldy clarified that it should be written as Hoovered and not Hubbard, which greatly excited the audience, as they knew very well what was about to come. And just like that, the general entered a sudden state of rage. The hero was intrigued by the reaction of the man, who suddenly burst out in laughter, claiming that the bald one was hilarious. Hubbard affirmed that the hero had bad English, which is why he misspelled the word, which annoyed the protagonist, who knew very well that he was right, entertaining the viewers. The general then affirmed that the lack of knowledge was no sin, before firmly claiming that it was due to his marvelous lectures that filled the void of ignorance. The bald one then asked the man about Veritas, which was the inscription on the shield. The general explained that this was the highest value of their school, meaning that he misunderstood the egghead, who wanted to explain how Veritas was spelled with an A rather than an E. And upon seeing Hubbard's offended reaction, he decided to drop the matter, as they had more urgent affairs at hand. The teacher then suggested that his disciple go bathe, before explaining to the confused hero that he reeked of the smell of excrement, leaving the comments disgusted. Go In-sung apologized as he began to strip in order to take his bath. Once his clothes were off, the audience began to discuss how he had gotten shameless, with that the stream was paused as the hero turned around. And just like that, the teacher was flashed. Our hero began to wonder about the place of his shower, while the general called him out on his lack of shame. Shortly after, as the evolved turtle used its power, Hubbard was left baffled as the viewers began to laugh, seeing how it was his first time meeting someone more particular than him. Later on, our hero had finished stripping himself of the bad smell, while the teacher was amazed by the proud turtle as he explained how he might resort to its power in the near future. But just then, a third person arrived at the entrance. The new weirdo began to wonder about the identity of the other two. Go In-sung asked Hubbard about the girl whom he presented as Leo. The general asked her if she had finished fooling around, only for her to ignore him and focus on the mystic turtle, which greatly pleased the fans. Leo then pointed out how our hero, who was shocked to be called old and bald, wasn't a rumor. So as introductions were being made, the hero affirmed that he wasn't always bald. The teacher then explained that the archer was greatly skilled despite lacking proper manners. Leah realized that he was still upset with her, and so she proposed to return the treasure, claiming to only have been fooling around. Yet to Leo's shock, the teacher affirmed that it won't be necessary as they will be adventuring together. And while this team-up pleased the lady, the young man was left surprised. The general explained that it would be most fitting to team up with his students in order to face the unknown dangers of this dungeon, which the archer agreed with. Yet the spearman had his doubts as anyone could steal a treasure and ditch the team. Leo then asked for their next action, which pleased Hubbard, seeing how she was acting on her own. Go In-sung suggested going for the nearest treasure. When a new escapee named Doghead entered the last dungeon, the general quickly wanted to invite him into their team. Yet the hero insisted on inviting him himself, as the newcomer might get creeped out if spoken to like a student. Please Save Me then invited Doghead to join the three of them. Yet upon seeing that there was no response, the young one realized that they had been ghosted, so Hubbard suggested leaving him be as he might be a lone wolf. Later on, our heroes arrive at the location of the next treasure and quickly entered. It was shocking to see a dungeon forest underground. The three of them progressed with utmost attention inside, and just as Leo explained how she would locate the enemy, the mutated Smilodon that the party had to slay in order to escape his domain made his entrance. The creature attacked the clueless girl from above, so Please Save Me urged her to duck, as he pierced the chest of the Smilodon by throwing his spear. Leo then fired an arrow that precisely pierced the creature's limb, leaving the protagonist amazed by her archery. Even so, the giant cat charged at them, only for the general to sneak up behind it and deliver the final blow by using his shield. Just like that, the boss had been defeated, as all viewers were left amazed by the attack power of the shield user. The party was pleased by this victory, while the spearman felt relieved to have teamed up with two talented people who greatly reduced the difficulty of his task. The party earned itself 1,000 votes for having slain this boss. Go In-sung began to wonder if the fact that the beast had 12 front claws and 8 in the back wasn't some sort of foreshadowing. But just then, the general uncovered a long chest. Inside it resided the 1,000-pound arrow, a rare one-use weapon that can only be paired with the celestial bow and was strong enough to shatter the sun and the moon, making the hero quickly realize that they were supposed to take down the sun. So he politely handed it over to the only archer of the group, claiming that they would get the celestial bow as well, leaving her thankful. Yet Leo asked the bald one to drop the formalities as they were the same age, which pleased the fandom. Go In-sung then found himself filled with joy upon seeing that Johansson had finally arrived, which didn't escape the eyes of the spectators. Please Save Me asked his teammates if he could invite her, seeing how they had teamed up inside the moon maze, which they both didn't oppose. As Instant Beauty was walking inside the dungeon, she received a message from our hero, who thought that she was harmed due to her late arrival. The bald one was then left shocked to see the lady claiming to have made a mistake by trusting him. Later on, we see the two streamers being reunited. The bald one quickly introduced his companions to Instant Beauty, who introduced herself as well. And when asked about the reason behind her mean reply earlier, it was revealed to the protagonist that Johansson had mistaken him for the annoying Doghead who bombarded her with invites. The lady was particularly annoyed by the fact that this streamer was claiming to have more wealth than her. And as the tank and the archer revealed to have also received invites from Doghead, Baldy was left horrified as the said streamer didn't even reply to him. This made the hero assume that Doghead was planning to make a team without the #1 position. Meanwhile, a blonde bowl cut asked the others to have faith in him, claiming to have many balloons. He affirmed to the odd group of people that he would lead them to freedom if they helped him get crowned #1. The bartender rephrased the words of the bowl cut, who insinuated that they had to take care of the monster and let him deal the last hit, which the one with the snake confirmed before promising more balloons for their help. Yet the swordsman had his doubts regarding the wealth of the blonde one, seeing how he had already given them a large sum. The man asked him to rest easy regarding that matter, as he had access to a lot of balloons due to the support of the gigantic Coral Guild. But just then, it came to his attention that another contestant had entered the dungeon. Meanwhile, the protagonist was urged by a teammate to invite the newcomer. But Instant Beauty quickly realized that her team was struggling with a giant cat, and so the angry girl quickly took out her sword in order to help the egg, the Indian, and the teacher with the monster. After the beast had been put down, Johansson asked what she was trying to tell him. So she explained how she wanted to reach the new guy who arrived, that he must have already been contacted by Doghead. Just then, the last contestant named Huon Reaper entered the dungeon. So Instant Beauty decided to quickly send him an invite before it was too late. But just then, something odd happened. It was revealed that a glitch had occurred, stripping this dungeon of its main purpose, which would result in the destruction of the dungeon itself in order to deal with the virus, which left the common intrigue, as these incidents had become very common. The system revealed that a last resort failsafe would allow the dungeon exit to remain open. And while the Hothead was left pissed off by this incident, the Egghead realized that this was a problem similar to one he had faced inside 1 to 8. But as it was announced that the ranking was of no importance now and that the final competition was now a race, Doghead was left infuriated. With that, the system would begin creating the track. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, as mountains began to rise. The shaking also affected the party of heroes. With that, the track had been completed. The only rule was to run from the starting point to the end in order to get out of this dungeon, which left the audience very excited, but left the players annoyed. All were in disbelief seeing how long and dangerous this race seemed, and as the system decided to teleport the 10 contestants to the start line, the party of heroes were sucked in, only to appear elsewhere, in front of the enemy team. Bull Cut quickly recognized Baldy as "Please save me." Yet Baldy pretended to not know who Bull Cut was despite being fully aware that this was Doghead. After insulting the one with the snake, Go In-sung began to think of the enemy team as cosplayers, as all of them looked like well-known iconic characters. Yu Hansen, who recognized the old man as the newcomer, asked him to quickly join them. Yet after taking a quick look, Horn Reaper decided to side with the enemy team instead, leaving the Hothead furious at him. The system then informed the two teams that they had an hour to escape by going through the racetrack, with each player having received the track map in their inventory, before explaining that the old first place would be getting a reward unique to the dungeon. With that, the protagonist received the normal grade skill, Highest Leap, with a 3-minute reset time that would allow him to jump up to 10 meters, which pleased his fans. As the system also claimed that the only rule was to finish the race, Doghead realized that it was urging them to run away, while Please Save Me came to the conclusion that the race would be an all-out brawl. Even so, the snake owner was determined to get first place as he gave the signal to his goons, and while the originals braced themselves, the newcomers had their doubts. The Bull Cut's eyes were shining with determination and malice. With that, the system notified the players that they would be eliminated if they began the race before the start signal was given. And so the countdown started. As Doghead had tried to push our hero away, the protagonist boosted his overall physical stats with 3 skills, in order to start off strong. Yet as the countdown struck 0, the blonde one tried to strike him down, only for the spearman to evade, and affirm that they had a solid plot in order to escape, before punching Doghead and claiming that the plan was foiled by his trouble-seeking team. The punch was so powerful that it knocked Doghead away, and just like that, the theme of the hero made a round for it. Instant Beauty was particularly pleased, claiming that the earth must have been painful. Meanwhile, the ball caught himself and was unable to process the events. At the same time, his allies just advised not to turn this race into an all-out brawl. The newcomer argued that he had an obligation, only for the others to affirm that he would be doomed if he failed to finish the race in 1 hour. With that being said, he asked his former teammates to not split up, seeing how they were already targeted by the other team. Watch the Samurai agreed with. Just like that, all 9 other contestants left Doghead alone, leaving him rather pissed off, seeing how he was left behind. He urged Bobble to bite him, and just like that, the evil-looking snake with many teeth obeyed. Back to our heroes, the bald man spotted a mysterious hole in the ground that they decided to check out. But just then, something big began to come towards them. A giant boulder was rolling full speed towards the party of heroes. All were left startled upon seeing that the purpose of the mysterious hole was to guide the giant rock. The archer began to lose hope, seeing how they had nowhere to run. But just then, the madman got a crazy idea, as he urged his team, who was left confused, to hold on tight to him. With that being said, he resorted to his new skill, and gathered his might while bracing himself, in order to make a high jump while carrying all of his teammates, for the sake of avoiding the giant boulder. And just like that, our hero and the rest of his team landed safe and sound. Go In-sung was amazed to see that his plan had actually worked, while the others were left grateful for his madness. Meanwhile, as the enemy team tried its best to finish the race, they suddenly noted something coming their way, which was none other than the boulder that our hero and his friend had escaped. And with a massive rock coming at high speed in their direction, the 3 cosplayers, along with the girl and the old man, decided to run for their lives, only to be met by a mysterious figure on the other side of this rock. A monster had suddenly appeared, leaving the girl frightened as the old man began to run away, only for her to quickly realize that this was none other than the team leader. The 4-armed monster was now face to face with a giant boulder, so gathered up all of his might in order to try and stop it. Just like that, Doghead stopped the massive rock, leaving the ground in shambles. The creature then smiled. With that, the girl was left horrified as she begged for rescue upon seeing the giant rock coming her way. In the end, she found herself as a puddle of blood under the massive rock. The 4-armed creature found it ironic that she was begging for the help of someone she had treated as a monster. Doghead then decided to assert his dominance by asking his team who was the captain. And while all of the contestants were left confused, the now menacing man recalled how he had asked for their aid, which is why he looked forward to working alongside them. With that being said, all of the players were forced to accept working under the one who was forcibly nominated as captain. Meanwhile, as the party of 4 ran for their lives, Instant Beauty theorized that the enemy had been crushed by the giant boulder, making her assume that they could slow down a little. Yet the general and Please Save Me affirmed that it was a bad idea, as they should get as far away from them as possible. Just then, Baldy and his teammates stumbled upon a giant roadblock that even the audience had no idea about. The giant plate of stone then began to fall off, and almost crushed our hero and his friends. Yet this was only the start of this party's problems, as they were in our face-to-face with golems. The stone creatures then suddenly opened their mouths, only for a rock to appear inside them. The giants of stone then fired the pebbles, at high speed in the direction of our hero and his party, and in that moment of panic, Instant Beauty reached into her inventory, before pulling out her sword and charging up ahead to her teammates' confusion. The lady then began to cut the projectiles mid-flight in order to stop them, which left the fandom amazed and impressed by her talent. The spearman decided to lose the same as he jumped in as well, and with a swift move, he threw the projectile away. Leo tried to fire arrows at the giant projectile, which the comments found useless. Shortly after, our protagonist was left horrified upon hearing screams. But at the last moment, the tank resorted to his shield in order to protect the girl. And just as the golem was about to bombard them once again according to the system, the swords maiden and the spearman charged at the giants of stone. The bald head began to deal with the golems, while his partners slashed the projectiles in half while they were still in their mouths. And with the monsters being taken care of, the party was now able to progress, and so they continued progressing on the track. While Instant Beauty and Please Save Me began to talk about how these monsters were easy compared to the ones they had faced before, Leo was then left stunned upon seeing that their path had been ambushed by 2 manticores. The fearsome beasts quickly launched their assault, only to be distracted later by the advanced feed that the general had on him, as he claimed that a good teacher must always be ready for anything. The archer then pointed out how the enemy team must be now far away. Meanwhile, the monster that leads the enemy easily grabbed the projectiles of the golems before throwing them like baseballs in order to smash the heads of the giants of stone, leaving them as a pile of lifeless rubble. Leo proposed to take some time to rest, which sounded like a good idea for the bald protagonist, but the hothead firmly opposed it as she urged them to keep moving. Yet as the teacher revealed his desire to also take a break, the decision was made. Later on, as the party was resting, Hubbard explained that they only had 30% of the track left. Just then, Please Save Me was left startled, as a giant scaly creature rushed in their direction, with the enemy party mocking them for being so slow. And while the A-head couldn't believe his eyes, Instant Beauty affirmed once again that it was a bad idea to take a break. Doghead then gave the beautiful lady another chance to join his team, leaving her infuriated as she charged at him with her blade. This scene pleased the philosopher, who donated 50 balloons. Yet, just as Instant Beauty was about to deliver the first slash, the quick monster took the upper hand by hitting her on the side, which left her to feel great pain. Even so, the tiger lady managed to perform a good landing. Doghead was determined to make her pay for turning down his offer. Just then, the archer prepared her arrow and fired towards the scaly one, only for the monster to catch it mid-air and affirm once again that victory would be his. With that being said, the creature with 4 arms deployed its minions in order to deal with the enemy, and just like that, all 4 of them charged at once. Asura was the first to make a move, as he smacked Leo with his hammer, while Leija Ryu, who is known as the Moonlight Swordsman, found himself facing Instant Beauty. Just like that, long sword clashed with katana. The girl found herself amazed by the speed and power of her opponent, who was a dual wielder on top of his immense potential. The streamer also knew very well that she was losing the edge with each strike. Just then, the Moonlight Swordsman saw an opportunity and switched his blade to reverse grip, before slashing the hip of his opponent with a quick sneak attack. The man cracked a malicious smile, while his defeated opponent had a hard time understanding what had just happened. Just like that, Instant Beauty found herself having a hard time moving. Meanwhile, regarding the third fight, the old man made a frog-like jump before grabbing the edge of the general's shield. Even so, the teacher was unfazed, thinking that he was ready for any type of attack, only for him to be hit by a poisonous breath that the comments realized was an unauthorized weapon. With that being said, Hubbard found himself being tackled down by the biggest normal opponent on the enemy team, before being slammed into the ground. Go In-sung couldn't believe his own eyes, as his team had been wiped out, when he was suddenly attacked by the Snake Man, who affirmed that he had no time to worry about others, and with a single punch from the creature who had 4 arms, our hero found himself flying off the track. With that, the protagonist began to scream as he was falling head first to the ground, while the enemy team rushed to finish the race, which would end in 15 minutes. But just then, our madman had a crazy idea, as he repositioned himself, before using his newly acquired skill in order to survive the fall and launch himself off the ground. Just like that, Please Save Me was now once again on the track, while the audience was left amazed by his mastery of the new skill. Upon seeing how much his team was beaten up, the spearman decided to resort to the help of his healing turtle. At the same time, the Snake Man was left overjoyed to have taken down the enemy team, At that moment, they passed by a particular sign, warning that they were entering a hot water area. The villains ran as fast as they could, yet one missiled step led the ground to misbehave, which caused students to escape the Snake Man, as a giant surge of hot water occurred right behind him. This made the old man fall off the track. Asura and Moonlight Swordsman were also caught in it as well. Yeah, the bartender was quick as he resorted to his card staircase, while the samurai saw his hat as the solution. Due to this little skill, Asura managed to prevent himself from falling off track, while Moonlight Swordsman was using his hat in order to serve the hot water. Just like that, both returned to safety and were still in race. As for the snake creature and the muscle man, the one with the cap begged for help, only to be used as a trampoline by the captain. In order to stay on track, just like that, the man found himself cursing the monster as he fell to his death. Doghead explained that he had no use for those who couldn't save themselves. Back to our hero and his team. Instant Beauty as well as the tank and the archer had their wounds healed by our protagonist's pet turtle. The teacher then pointed out how they should have just listened to her in order to avoid such a situation. Yet as the girls assumed that the enemy must have already finished the race, the system revealed that they had 10 minutes left in order to reach the finishing line. Instant Beauty doubted that they could succeed in such a short period of time while our hero was left infuriated. Go In-sung claimed that the opponent must have fallen into some sort of unknown trap, which is why they should still have faith and keep moving on. Shortly after, the exit was found by none other than the enemy team and its captain, who was eager to be the first to finish the race. Doghead pressed Moonlight Swordsman and Asura for their good help, yet they weren't satisfied seeing how their lonely boss had sacrificed his teammates in order to achieve victory. Suddenly, the Snake Man found himself startled upon finding the true first place along with his party riding a giant wave in order to catch up. All of this was the fruit of the evolved turtle's power, who was able to control the water. With that being said, our heroes finally arrived at shore, leaving them now face to face with the enemy team, whose captain couldn't believe his own two eyes. The path of the protagonist earned itself more and more admirers as the archer explained how it was his unexpected ability to control water that allowed them to ride the tide. Doghead was left irritated by this genius idea that lacked logic. With that, 5 minutes were left until the end of the race. The monster ordered his teammates to stand their ground, seeing how the exit wasn't big enough for the 7 of them, only for the teacher to affirm that despicable persons such as them could never become his students. And so Hubbard charged at the enemy and knocked Asura away with his powerful Veritas shield. The swordsman tried to fight back using a special technique, yet little did he know the Tiger Lady decided to stop fooling around, as she then quickly threw out his blood with a slash of her blade. The samurai was left stunned seeing how he was overwhelmed by another swordsman, before falling as Dice Meat off the track along with his other ally. With his goons defeated, the boss charged at the party, claiming that even if they placed their lives on the line, he still would beat them all. And so the angry protagonist reinforced his mental and physique in order to take on the Snake Man. Just then, something odd occurred with the body of Doghead, and just like that, Bullcut had regressed to his human form, with the bald head affirming that he had lost the battle. With that, only a few minutes remained until the dungeon collapsed on itself. The villain urged this path to bite him once again. Doghead wanted to earn himself another fighting chance despite the heavy load that he would be putting on his body. Suddenly, the snake was shot by none other than the archer, who affirmed that she despised these pests, seeing how his only hope had been shot down by an adult. Doghead tried to negotiate with the streamer who charged at him, yet Please Save Me didn't want to hear any of it, as he punched the snake lover off the track in order to make him fall to his death. Hubbard explained that mercy is only shown to those who deserve it, which Leo agreed with. With that being said, the party of heroes made their way into the hexagon, and with it being turned on, the 4 of them managed to safely escape from the last dungeon. But before the party could enter the hub, the system declared that the first place had lost a lot, which is what he will be compensated for by choosing between an inventory or the advanced skill, highest leap, as a prize. The bald one quickly picked the second option. And with that being said, the party of heroes was finally teleported away from the dungeons. Just then, Go In-sung found himself startled, as the huge city in front of him turned out to be the hub. The young man who missed civilization began to wonder about the last time he had seen such a place. Only then did he realize that he was in some sort of abnormal ride. The protagonist was shocked to find himself inside a cage ball carried by a giant bird. He looked around in awe and wondered if the other 2 flying nearby him belonged to different TVs. Suddenly, the cage was dropped, leaving our hero to fall, trembling for his life. The cage of the spearman hit some empty one, before rolling down the hill while the fans began to talk about how the bird made an exception and dropped him off rudely due to hunger. With that being said, the cage of our hero had finally stopped as his audience grew excited by his arrival at the hub. Please Save Me was displeased with this situation, as this uncomfortable ride ended with him outside of the city. Just then, something came to his attention, as his system window opened up and items began to fall off from it. This left him confused, as his inventory rejected many items despite still not being full. When suddenly, 2 weird-looking men came charging at him, leaving him startled. The odd-looking ones casually began to search through the items of the egg for anything valuable, earning one of them a kick in the face for trying to steal from him. This angered the other two, who claimed that the owner of the staff wanted their treasure, and so Please Save Me increased his physical power, before smacking the fat one with a powerful right hook to the face. Seeing his horizontal friend being knocked away so easily made the last thief realize how powerful our hero was, and so he gave out the signal to his friend, who quickly cut down a cord using his knife, making something fall from a pulley. And just as the metal cage was about to crack, the egg-headed hero, a whip rolled itself around his leg, leaving him startled, as he was suddenly dragged away from a crushing death. Only then did Please Save Me realize that the giant metal cage was about to fall on him. His leg was then released by the lady, who explained to him that he must be more worried about his own items. She also explained how those persons were thieves who survived by robbing others. The angered looter charged at the savior of the protagonist from behind, only for our hero to quickly act and punch him down to the ground. Just like that, the thief activated forward dash in order to run away. So the streamer activated his new skill in order to jump as high as possible, for the sake of reaching a gun placed high on the crane. The man with his knife claims such a jump should be doable, only to be smacked off the tower by Please Save Me shortly after. Go In-sung affirmed that this was their punishment for troubling him, while the red-headed lady spectated in silence. Shortly after, our hero introduced himself and expressed his gratitude towards his savior, but he was quickly left shocked as the lady was already aware of his identity. The streamer assumed that she was one of his viewers, and to everyone's shock, the lady turned out to be Lin, the member of the Blood Clan who was sweet-talking the bald head the entire stream. The young man was very happy to have finally met her, only for the lady to confirm that the battle was done, before asking him to gather his stuff and come with her, leaving the comments shocked, as well as the protagonist by this unforeseen cold shoulder. After some time inside a fancy building, the streamer found himself alone in an elevator with the member of the Blood Clan. He quickly demanded an explanation as she asked him to stop streaming. Go In-sung was surprised as Lin affirmed that she wouldn't reveal anything to him if he didn't stop the broadcast, leading him to quickly obey. Once at the restaurant, Please Save Me began to think that he was about to lose his sanity due to the scent of the various dishes. Suddenly, the lady snapped her fingers and left him overjoyed by declaring that she would treat him to anything that he ordered. Yet as he began to recite many items from the menu, she explained that he would be the one paying if he couldn't continue his meal, so he asked her to rest easy. Go In-sung urged the waiter to hurry with his food, making Lin demand him to show some better manners. Our hero was shocked to see her talking down to him so much, seeing how she didn't seem much older than him. But shock was quickly replaced with confusion as the member of the Blood Clan explained how she was allowed to talk like that, following this logic. Lin the Vanity reminded him how she was a recruiter for her clan and how she would like to cut straight to the chase. The protagonist was left baffled as the girl asked him if he would give his life for the glory of the Blood Clan. The egghead couldn't quite understand what she meant, so the lady affirmed that he wouldn't be able to join them if he didn't have the necessary determination. Lin wanted the protagonist to perish with her clan, who was among the three strongest, as one of the other two, Coral, wanted obedient servants, and the other, White Lotus, wanted family. The hero asked the lady what kind of relationship he would be having with the Blood Clan, before questioning her poor recruiting skills, who immediately brings up death. The whip user asked the hero to forget all that she had just said, making him realize that something was off, seeing how easily she had dropped the matter. But just then, our hero's order arrived, and while the Blood Clan member explained that she would humbly eat rice, our protagonist was left overjoyed as he hadn't seen real food for a long time. So as he dug into the meal, he decided to ask the lady a question. Go In-sung wanted to know more about the herbs, yet the lady affirmed that he was still too inexperienced to know about it. Even so, she decided to explain how this place was, in fact, a waiting room for the second dungeon, which would host a championship to someone who was too distracted by his meal. She also explained how the first class would receive an A-class awakening stone, while second and third would receive B and C tiers as rewards, before stating that the guild that helped the first place would also be rewarded as well. The spearman asked about what happens when one wins alone. According to the girl, he would get the A-rank stone as well as the guild reward. Go In-sung then urged her to pay for the food, before quickly asking her if he could order once again, leaving her stunned. Shortly after, in front of the building, he found himself full. Lin tried to explain that the help of the guild was crucial for victory. Even so, the protagonist had his doubts, so the lady explained how herbs and repeaters were involved, leaving him shocked. She then continued by stating that those two groups of people would have the highest chance of winning due to their equipment and experience. Suddenly, someone spotted the both of them. The men that were looking for trouble with the spearmen were quickly recognized as the looters from before. Yet before they could even launch their attack, Lin asked the protagonist to quickly flee together, only for them to be quickly cut off by the rest of the thieves. With that being said, the redhead and the bald head had no choice but to return inside. But the thief demanded they face his crew, only to be met by a closing door. When asked about the reason the thoughts didn't follow them inside, the member of the Blood Clan revealed that this was due to them being residents, which confused the newcomer. It was then explained how the death of the underworld worked in this place and seeing how each of them was assigned an area, the thieves couldn't enter the hotel that was out of theirs, and that this wasn't a defensive role as some loopholes existed, like the lupines. Lin then addressed Mr. Young Hoon in order to seek a room. She explained to the streamer how the safer option for him would be to reside at the hotel. Just like that, the egghead was given room 707. Yet after taking a second to think, our protagonist asked the benefactor for the reason behind her kindness, and was left even more shocked upon learning that she aimed to support him even if he doesn't want to enter the Blood Clan. The tired-looking girl explained that she would give him the great intel inside her mind that no guilt possessed in order to earn him the first place, leaving Please Save Me no choice but to ask her for the thing she seeks from him. Lin claimed to only be after the guild's share of the first place, leaving our hero to think once again. And when asked for the reason she had chosen him, she revealed that she needed a lone wolf. All other contestants were already inside a guild. The bald protagonist decided to point out the other newbies, so the girl claimed that he was distinguished. With that being said, Lin made her leave as she asked the hero to think about her offer until she reaches out later to him. Please Save Me had a hard time believing everything the lady had told him, yet he decided to set this matter aside for the moment, as he was in desperate need of rest. At the same time, inside the city, a girl was running for her life, and in the face of flying axes, Leo tried to evade as much as possible while using her cape as some kind of shield. The archer then tried to fight back by firing 3 arrows at once, yet her projectiles had been quickly blocked by the shield of her attackers. Even so, one of her arrows managed to score a powerful headshot. The soul of the dead affirmed that it was disappointed, claiming that it wanted to have even more fun before returning. This scene left Leo very much baffled. The goons recognized her as a 5248 and a newbie, explaining how the spirit of those who had died here would be sent back to the underworld. The archer tried to fight back only to quickly realize that she had run out of ammo, which was something that very much pleased her attackers. The desperate girl tried to ask for some help, only to be left horrified upon seeing that Go Insung wasn't streaming at the moment. The attackers then began to approach the poor Leo, asking her if her life began to flash before her eyes, when suddenly someone intervened. A man in a suit and a coat descended upon the criminals, before blowing them away by the mere power of his landing. With that being said, the annoyed man began to wonder about the actions of those two who should be at work. The attackers realized that the battle had been lost due to the appearance of the enforcer, and so they decided to escape as fast as they could. Yet the man with the hat smirked before launching himself at quick speed in order to pop up right in front of the criminals. Just like that, both of them were grabbed by the skull and lifted into the air. The enforcer began to talk about how the two of them had escaped their workplace in order to commit some crimes against a dungeon contestant. Thus, he punished the thieves, sending them back to the underworld for going out of their boundaries. And just like that, both of them suddenly disappeared. Leo was left amazed by the enforcer, who explained how they would be spending a long time in the present camp. The archer then asked the code if he was also a contestant of dungeons, only for him to ignore her question and recognize her as the child with potential. But as an angry Leo affirmed that she was an adult, the man explained that he would be keeping his eyes on her. The archer was then left confused upon learning that even the Hell King's interest had been picked up by her skill. And just like that, the enforcer left the scene. The next day, inside a small village, someone was asked to turn the amethyst into a necklace. Go In-sung felt happy as he heard the blacksmith claim that this was a doable and short task. But to his shock, its price was 5 silver, which in this world translates to 500 balloons. The protagonist was also left in a tough spot as the man claimed that he was fitly if he does agree with his terms. Later on, the egghead found himself walking with any necklace around his neck. Please Save Me and purchased reinforced suits and advanced evolution stones, the 09 shows, as well as a coupon to expand inventory, and looked at the mirror, thinking of the huge sum he had spent. Even so, he was left frustrated. Humpty Dumpty then touched his head, thinking how he had a new outfit, before comparing the sprouts coming out of the street to his shiny baldness. Only then was the madman struck with yet another genius idea. A little later, inside a shop, the hero was presented with the honey of life. The salesman explained how the other item asked for by our protagonist wasn't very much popular. Even so, the growth stimulant had been presented to the old man. Please Save Me was happy to see that the chance he had taken had been fruitful. Even so, later that day, as he walked down the street, he recalled how Lin explained to him why repeaters always had the upper hand on newcomers. According to the lady, it wasn't power or gear that separated the both of them, but how much they were ready for the dungeon. Please Save Me then began to think of how he was pointed to a place that makes all kinds of herb mixtures. With that, he entered the shop, as the shop owner asked him if he sought medicines, before claiming that he was overwhelmed today and urging the client to return tomorrow. Go In-sung was left baffled upon seeing that the salesman was, in fact, sleeping while sitting as the comments began to mock this recognizable figure, claiming him to be paralyzed. The hero insisted that his problem should be solved today, yet the old man insisted on his point. With that being said, The protagonist had no choice but to go to another herb mixer, which didn't bother the shopkeeper. Yet as our hero began to think out loud about whether or not he could find another shop that could use his herb of immortality, the old man suddenly woke up and began to scream, before gripping onto the one who claimed to have the immortality herb, which amazed the audience who had assumed that he had always been disabled. The old man claimed that it was a surprise for him to find such an important item in the hands of someone like our egghead. Save Me then asked the old one about the medicine he could craft with such a herb. He explained how this herb had a great amount of yin that could be turned into immense energy with a proper treatment before comparing it to the wild ginseng and its yang. The protagonist began to compare it to aura and chi, only for the old man to affirm that it costs 10 gold and that he would have to discover it by himself. Yet as the hero claimed to only have 1 gold, the comments began to laugh at him for being a liar and claiming that he had much more. Despite the interest, the old man refused to help our hero, who was desperate to negotiate. But the shopkeeper affirmed that he places money over everything else. And so, in a moment of desperation, the spearmint promised to give the man something more precious than the immortality herb after winning the dungeon. Yet he had his doubts as this was a total stranger. But upon seeing the little creature pop out of the suit that he quickly recognized as a black tortoise, he was left amazed to see such a magnificent and powerful creature by the side of the simple young man. And so he finally accepted to process the immortality herb before reminding the grateful hero about his promise. The old man claimed that the work would be completed tomorrow. Later on in the hotel, the life and the growth accelerant had both been opened. And with the 2 substances in the hands of our protagonist, he began to think of how the first restores life energy, while the second made bamboos grow at the speed of light. Baldy applied the substances to his head and began to pray for her, only to match by disappointment upon seeing the results in the mirror, making him assume that he should add honey and the growth elixir. As Please Save Me was left frustrated seeing how powerful both substances, the mocking comments began to claim that even the roots of his hair had been burned. With that, he lay defeated on the bed, devastated by the fact that he would have to live as a bald man for the rest of his life. Just then, our protagonist was contacted by Johansson, who was asking about his whereabouts. And as he responded by claiming that he was on his bed, she asked him if he was invited into a guild yet. So after seeing this message, he annoyingly claimed that he didn't want any of them, which confused the girl, so the hero explained how he was now headless. With that, he buried his shiny head into a pillow. But just then, he received identification, which was a quick sum regarding the events of the upcoming championship that involved the contestants of 5247 and 5428. Later on, inside the shop of the old man, the shopkeeper was working hard. He finally found the right amount of underworld water that would be used. He was also excited at the idea of treating rare items in such a long time. The old man knew very well that his main job would be to absorb the life energy while getting rid of the other properties, which is why the water of the underworld was crucial, as it would be the substance sucking up the life energy. The only ingredient left would be the honey of life. The next day had finally dawned. Upon entering, the protagonist was left shocked to find the shopkeeper sleeping inside. The old one slowly woke up, before explaining that he had a great time despite how difficult the task was. Please Save Me was more interested in the final product, so the old one pointed him to it, which turned out to be a container of a substance that looked like dirt, which greatly entertained the audience. This was the manner of life, a great item that gives a maximum half a permanent boost, but would kill its consumer if his body isn't strong enough. And while Please Save Me looked at this, the comments had a hard time believing that the immortality herb was an ingredient to the world of the 3 substances. Go In-sung affirmed that consuming this medicine would be impossible. So the old man asked him about the most crucial thing inside the dungeon, which the young one assumed to be strength. And when asked about how to build it, he replied by stating the strength builds itself. So the shopkeeper clarified that strength varied from a person to another by giving body builds as an example. Yet the protagonist still couldn't quite understand. The old man simplified it even more by explaining that he would become a new vessel, as this product would allow him to break his limits, before claiming that one would be greatly rewarded upon eating items with great vitality, and as he explained how a weak body would die from consumption. So the young man pointed to his necklace, claiming that it would protect him, before starting to eat the repulsive medicine, which greatly entertained the audience once again. Just then he was invaded by a sudden feeling, as he dropped the plate on the ground. A great pain had invaded the body of the bald man, which made the viewers assume that he was soon to die. The old man quickly gave him the honey of life. The protagonist knew that it was only a temporary solution, only to be the victim of the pain once again, and was in such a critical situation to the point where his dying skill, Iron Will, had been turned on. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, the archer rushed to the tank, and that she was glad to meet once again. Leo explained how the constant bullying made it impossible to go shopping, before explaining how glad she was to share a manager with the man. Yet the girl affirmed that she was unable to reach the protagonist. The party then began to talk about how 4 days had already gone by, and about the rumors regarding those who die in the hub being sent back to the underworld. Meanwhile, our protagonist began to scream, and as the old man pointed out how he was done napping, the young man assumed that he had passed away, only for it to be revealed that he didn't die but went into a coma. This left him intrigued, as he stood up while still being confused, and upon looking at the mirror, he was left stunned to finally see some hair on his bald head. Sometime later at Distract 5248 in the first area of the Dungeon Championship, all were rushing inside, and all had various powers and forms. This championship was reserved for the newcomers from Sanzu, Jordan, Heavenly Gate, and Stags who had escaped the first dungeon by their power alone. The groups would be selected by a drawing process, with 13 contestants being from Heavenly Gates, 2 from Stags, 8 from Jordan, and the party of our hero. The 3 of them quickly noticed that they were the smallest group in the whole championship, making the tired lady assume that the protagonist had really met his end, which the archer refused to believe. And as they began to argue on whether he would come or not, the teacher threatened to call their parents. Meanwhile, the other groups began to look down on the little party of newcomers, treating them as only here by luck. The different groups then began to talk about a certain individual from Sanzu who earned himself the first place in most dungeons, and as a short time was left for registration, the member of the Blood Clan assumed that the protagonist threw in the towel. But as the system explained how everyone should remain sitting as the preliminaries shortly commence after being appointed by the draws, he finally made his entrance, leaving the archer shocked. The party was particularly happy to see the spearman finally arrive as the comments began to talk about his miraculous hair regrowth. And as Leo began to bombard him with questions regarding his hair being fake or not, he affirmed that his hairline was natural, which left him rather annoyed by this lively one. As Instant Beauty called Hangout for arriving late, he explained that he had an urgent matter to handle. Even so, she was still confused about his eyes being red, which also shocked the protagonist, who was just learning about this detail as well. The system then urged all contestants to regain their seats as the party kept on having small chats. But as the system urged those who didn't register to do so, the hero was left confused as his party urged him to proceed as quickly as possible. With that being said, the registration had been quickly done. Our hero managed to register at the last moment. He also realized that crazy events were about to occur after his long coma due to the medicine he had consumed, leaving him with no information whatsoever. Johansson asked him about his face that pointed out ignorance. So the protagonist explained how he was truly clueless, making her ask if his guild hadn't enlightened him on the detail. And when asked about the one she had enrolled in, the girl revealed that to be Coral, which left the comments shocked, seeing how it was unexpected of Instant Beauty to join a guild with a power equivalent to a military. And as the baffled hero explained how he was asleep the whole time, the tiger lady couldn't believe her ears. It was then confirmed to him that the championship, where the main goal would be to locate objects, was divided into finals and preliminaries. The young man asked his friend about the intel given to her by Coral. Even so, she wanted to know what he was thinking. Why the audience was left greatly entertained, seeing how Coral wasn't very much forgiving guild. The system then informed the contestants that the representative of each team must climb to the podium in order to draw a ball, with the first being Paywad from Jordan. The purple figure walked to the podium and reached for the ball, before drawing the number 6. With that came the time for our hero to descend, having been nominated by his team. But as he climbed the stairs, Paywad, who he just passed, left him startled. The hero seemed to have recognized this figure, as it was none other than his old acquaintance, Doghead. This left the team of Sansa River in great shambles. And just as he was being absorbed by this matter, he was brought back to reality by the system urging him to draw a ball. Meanwhile, the events were observed from a tall person from afar. The scout of Coral named Evil recognized the purple one as Doghead. Homie seriously went to the Jordan TV in order to become the first place. Evil then quickly warned Instant Beauty about this individual being Doghead. The girl agreed with the scout and responded by claiming that she was well aware of this fact. Evil also regretted having one's aim to make the Snake Man a part of Coral. Just then, our hero drew out the number 3. With that being said, it was now the turn of the number 1 of Heavenly Gate, named Alpha and Omega, to draw out his number. Instant Beauty then asked, "Please save me if the number 1 of Jordan was Doghead," which he immediately confirmed. The party began to discuss how this individual managed to switch platforms as well as names. And as Johansson called how her guild asked her to keep an eye out for him, the other members began to fear the worst regarding the snake's intention. Just then, Peo turned towards our hero and made a heart in order to greet the summoner, who was left absolutely shocked.